Welcome everybody to the June 15th, 2021 regular meeting of the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation is encouraged. To minimize feedback in the audio, all participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should raise their hand or unmute themselves and turn on their camera to indicate that they would like to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. When your name is called, you will be unmuted. When it is your turn to speak, please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org, planner@plancom.org, planner@plancom.org. For action items, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chair. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comments will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I will ask Commissioner Linkus to lead us in the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Would all please rise?
Good afternoon. I put together a few words in honor of upcoming Juneteenth and also Pride Month. God, grant us the grace to make peace with oppression. Help us to use our freedoms to bring justice among people everywhere. And Lord, change our worship and work into a genuine encounter with you and our better selves, so that our lives may be changed for the good of all. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. With that, I would like to ask the clerk to go on ahead and do the roll call vote, please.
Good afternoon, Joseph.
Here.
Bernstein.
Here.
Cardenas.
Here.
Dix.
Here.
Dowdy.
Here.
Andy. Andy. Kress.
Here.
Linkus.
Here.
Marino.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Dickerson.
This is Matthew Pleasant, sitting in for Amber Dickerson.
Rodriguez. Rodriguez? Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item up is the approval of the minutes for the following meetings. We have the regular meeting of May 10th, 2021, and the public hearing on City of Tampa plan amendments on May 10th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve? All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Powell, a second by Commissioner Marino. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Joseph.
Yes.
Bernstein.
Yes.
Cardenas.
Yes.
Dix.
Yes.
Dowdy.
Yes.
Kress.
Yes.
Linkus.
Yes.
Marino.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you. All right, the next item up on the agenda is public input for items not scheduled on the the agenda, and I don't believe we had anyone signed up for that.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So moving on to item number 3, our first action item is LDC 210703. It's a text amendment, and the presenters are Tony Garcia and Kyle Dollman.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tony Garcia, Planning Commission staff. Thank you, Chairman Joseph. Appreciate that. This is a LDC amendment to the county's Land Development Code 21-0703. This is the amendment of flood damage control administrator, and flood control board regulations. The presenter for this particular agenda item will be Mr. Kyle Dollman, PE, CFM, Hillsborough County Engineering and Operations Department. So I will cede the dais to Mr. Dollman now for his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you and good afternoon, Planning Commission members. As Tony said, my name is Kyle Dollman. I'm the floodplain administrator, and I'm in the Engineering and Operations Department. So I'm going to give a quick presentation here. I'm going to share my screen, and if someone can let me know that they're able to see it, that would be fantastic.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So as Tony mentioned, this presentation is for Land Development Code amendments pertaining to floodplain management regulations. The item is LDC 2103 or 0703. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. A little bit of background on this amendment. Hillsborough County is currently part of a multi-year process led by FEMA to revise our flood insurance study and associated flood insurance rate maps in our coastal areas. And these revised map products will become effective in October of this year. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that effort, but the reason why I bring it up is that FEMA, in coordination with the State Floodplain Management Office, requires that our county ordinances meet minimum National Flood Insurance Program requirements prior to the effective date of a map revision like this. And during their review of our ordinances, it was identified by the State Floodplain Management Office that the County Construction Code and Land Development Code have certain deficiencies that need to be addressed prior to the map effective date. As part of this update, well, I guess let me digress for a second. I am going to be discussing the Construction Code kind of in conjunction with the Land Development Code here in this presentation because the two updates are very much dependent on each other. So just bear that in mind as we move through this presentation. So as part of this update, the Construction Code and Land Development Code are being revised to continue to meet National Flood Insurance Program regulations, to resolve conflicting and consolidate duplicative regulations between the Construction Code and the Land Development Code, to ensure consistency with the latest edition of the Florida Building Code, the 7th edition, and to maintain a community rating system Class 5 rating, which provides unincorporated county residents an annual flood insurance premium savings of approximately $5.9 million. So that's a very important program that we administer here at the county, and we want to ensure that we have regulations in place that don't preclude us from keeping that Class 5 rating. So to summarize these changes, any new or more stringent requirements when compared to the existing Land Development Code and Construction Code should really only reflect what's required by federal law, state law, or CRS Class 5 rating requirements. And speaking of newer or higher standards, there are two items that I'd like to specifically touch on today. One of those being coastal A-zone requirements or regulations. On our new maps that are going to become effective in October, we will have for the first time what's known as a LIMWA delineated on the maps. The LIMWA is the limit of moderate wave action, and that's essentially the demarcation point where you might expect wave heights of about 1.5 feet in the 100-year design storm event. And so any A-zones, any flood zones that are A-zones seaward of this LIMWA line are now going to be designated as coastal A-zones. And because of this, we need to regulate them as such. And so that's part of these amendments, and we are going to be regulating those coastal A-zones as is proposed in these amendments consistent with what's in the Florida Building Code 7th edition, which is essentially to regulate them as V zones with a couple exceptions. The second item here that I'd like to bring your attention is the manufactured home elevation requirement. And this one is indeed a higher standard. In our current codes and in the Florida Building Code, there's an exemption for manufactured homes where instead of building to the what's called the base flood elevation or the 100-year flood elevation plus 1 foot, they can instead build so that their lowest floor is just 36 inches above ambient grade. That is the current exception. However, we are proposing to eliminate that exception and require manufactured homes to, as with all other structures, be built to that base flood elevation plus 1 foot of freeboard. And the reason why we're doing this is twofold. The first is that this is now, the elimination of this exception is now a CRS Class 8 prerequisite. So if we were to leave this exception, Hillsborough County would be retrograded from a Class 5 community all the way down to a Class 9 community. And our residents would go from getting 25% discount on their flood insurance premiums to 5% discount on their flood insurance premiums. So there's a monetary incentive involved with that. But then really the other reason is that, as with many of these amendments, is that it's going to better protect life and property from the perils of flooding. And then to just summarize the schedule looking forward, on May 18th, we held public outreach for these amendments. On May 20th, we had our first BOCC public hearing for the Land Development Code item. Today, we're obviously presenting for the Planning Commission, and tomorrow we have the second BOCC public hearing for the LDC item, and that will concurrently be the first and only BOCC public hearing for the Construction Code item. And with that, that concludes the presentation for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Were there any members of the public signed up for this item?
No, sir.
Okay. We don't have anyone on the line, so I will then open it up to the commissioners for comments or questions on this item. Yes, Commissioner Dowdy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great presentation, Kyle. I actually have a couple of minor suggestions, corrections to the language that was in the document, in the text amendment. Maybe just really minor things, but if we're opening it up and making the change, I think the words matter. One was, I think it's on page 12 of, page 12, 3.06.11b. The last sentence in the limitations on sites in the floodway says the demonstrates that the proposed development or land disturbing activity will not result in any increase in the base flood elevation. I think that should be in base flood elevations, not the singular of base flood elevation, to be consistent with language throughout the rest of the document. And there's another one on page 24 in the definition of a floodway. The definition says the area that should be reserved in order to discharge the base flood without increasing the water surface elevation. Shouldn't there be a certain amount, a foot or something like that in that definition as well? Those are the two items that I saw in reading it.
Was there any response from staff to the commissioner's comments, or?
Yeah, I don't know if Kyle's still there.
Yeah, are you still there?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I had the mute button on there.
Oh.
Yeah, those are certainly comments that I think we can take a look at and probably make those changes. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Dowdy. Are there any more comments from the commissioners? I'm not seeing anybody's face or hands pop up online. So I will take that as a no and go ahead and close public comment on this item and open it up to the commissioners for motions. Yes, Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we find LDC 21-0703 consistent. I believe this is for a consistency finding. Someone clarify this? Because an LDC.
Yes, sir. That it's a consistency finding.
Thank you.
The county's comprehensive plan.
That's what I was asking. Thank you. With the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
All right, we have a motion for consistency by Commissioner Bernstein, a second by Commissioner Dowdy.
Can I have, sorry, Mr. Chair, just a question. Do we need to put Commissioner Dowdy's suggestions in the motion?
If Commissioner Bernstein would like to amend his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, permission to amend my motion to incorporate the two language suggestions offered by my colleague, Commissioner Dowdy.
Second again.
All right, we have an amended motion by Commissioner Bernstein for a consistency finding with Commissioner Dowdy's comments included. Second by Commissioner Dowdy of that amended motion. Where are we now? Oh, is there any more discussion from the commissioners on this item? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Joseph?
Yes.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Dix?
Yes.
Dowdy?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes.
Linkus?
Yes.
Marino?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda are a ton of briefings and presentations, so no action items. All right, the first of our briefings is 4A, Countywide Outreach on Growth, Survey and Stakeholder Interview Results, and the presenters are Melissa Dickens and Robert Allen.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. As Chair Joseph just mentioned, this is an informational item. We're sharing the results of some extensive outreach on growth and development topics within unincorporated Hillsborough County. Robert Allen with AICP Associates has been managing the first-party research to get the perspective of our community, specifically within unincorporated county. The outreach that he's going to be sharing includes both targeted stakeholder interviews as well as a statistically significant telephonic survey. I'll also share that information from the results will be used to inform updates to the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. We also have a workshop with the Board of County Commissioners on Thursday to share this information. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Allen to share the results. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. As she said, my name is Robert Allen at AICP Associates. We've called this project the Sustainable Growth Study, and I will move quickly. We have a lot of information to cover. Can you all see my screen okay? Perfect. So in late 2019, early 2020, the Planning Commission reached out to us seeking statistically valid feedback on growth and development within specifically unincorporated Hillsborough County. Because of some pandemic-related delays, we got started on our data collection in 2020. Ultimately, this all builds up to a telephonic survey to collect statistically valid information from residents in unincorporated Hillsborough County. But to start with that, we conducted a series of stakeholder interviews to talk to parties that are directly affected by and involved with growth and development issues in the area. This was a crucial component of developing our survey for the general public. So we began with stakeholder interviews. Specifically, we had individual telephone interviews with 38 stakeholders. This was designed as a replacement for focus groups during the pandemic and was rather successful in that effort. 3 different stakeholder groups were targeted. Developers who had operated within Hillsborough County. We had a rural stakeholder group, which comprised a mixture of interests, including environmental organizations and owners of land in rural Hillsborough County. And we had an infill group, which was residents in unincorporated Hillsborough County who lived in areas that may be targeted for additional infill density and intensity. Again, this qualitative feedback helped to guide our survey design process. The interviews averaged approximately 45 minutes in length, and we conducted them from November 17th of 2020 through February 25th of this year. So I'll begin with our infill stakeholder group. We'll move quickly through this section. They comprised everyday residents of areas like Town and Country, the University area, Palm River, Brandon Riverview, Progress Village, and East Lake Orient Park. We wanted to speak to everyday residents in a longer form format before speaking to them on a shorter form telephonic survey so that we could get a sense of what motivating factors they had on these issues. So for all of these stakeholder interviews, we have kind of a consensus column and a disagreement column. Our consensus points among our infill stakeholders were that county services need to keep up with population growth increases. Specifically, roads, traffic, and public schools were mentioned at the most. Infill stakeholders agreed that population growth brings economic benefits and greater diversity of retail and entertainment options, especially to their local areas. They largely agree that walkability and public transit are not viable options for their neighborhoods as currently configured. Our stakeholders largely select their place of residency considering two major factors, that is cost and family factors. Family factors can be a mixture of, I want the space to have a family, or I want to live closer to my family. And lastly, infill stakeholders agree that focusing development in urban areas is sound policy for Hillsborough County. In terms of where they disagreed, opinions varied on the value of attempting to improve transit and walkability in their communities, with many of the stakeholders saying that if only the sidewalks, bike lanes, and bus routes were improved, more people in their local area would take advantage of them. Whereas others, especially when it came to walking and biking, indicated that the spread out nature of their current area fundamentally works against those modes of transit. Our rural stakeholder group spans several parties owning large parcels of land in unincorporated Hillsborough County, but we also spoke to several other adjacent organizations, such as some ecologists and environmental advocates, some agriculture industry representation, and we also spoke to Mosaic, given their large landownings in Hillsborough County. We wanted to talk about population growth. We wanted to focus on transfer of development rights programs in specific, and also discuss other county policies. So we had a lot of different opinions in this group, but again, some more consensus than disagreement. Overwhelmingly, the rural stakeholders agree that this concept of the rural lifestyle, having space, fewer neighbors, is important to residents in the area. They agreed largely that population growth should be centered in urban areas. They also affirmed, as did the last stakeholder group, that increased population growth is putting pressure on traffic, roads, and other county infrastructure. When we spoke to this stakeholder group about transfer of development rights programs, they largely fell into a high information and a lower information category. The stakeholders that had familiarity with this program suggested that there weren't any receiving areas for this program, or they had concerns about its economic viability. Whereas the stakeholders that did not have as much information about transfer of development rights, we had some information to provide them if they didn't, indicated that they had some reluctance about ever wanting to give up development rights to their property. There was a sentiment that was pretty strong among our rural stakeholders that policies designed to protect rural lands could clash with property rights issues, and the talk of lawsuits was mentioned in some of those conversations. And lastly, when we asked them about their projections for the long-range future of the area in which they live, most rural stakeholders forecasted that increased suburbanization of rural lands will continue to be the trend. When asked for a reason, they often suggested that it just was a fact of Hillsborough County being at the center of the Tampa Bay area. In terms of where our rural stakeholders disagreed, the sharpest disagreement was on the value of legislation to limit growth and development. Agricultural perspectives warned that attempts to protect agricultural lands could be counterproductive. They spoke to the need for the financing being dependent on the market value of their land as an essential component of their operations. Our environmental perspectives stress the importance of growth limits to protect open spaces, water quality, and local species, especially the larger species, which they indicated, as much scientific research shows, need larger amounts of contiguous land. And some of our stakeholders raised the prospect of expanded incorporation of county lands by the cities of Temple Terrace and Plant City as kind of a counterweight to any efforts that Hillsborough County might have to limit rural development. Finally, there was some disagreement on the ELAP program, with some of the stakeholders defending the program's work and encouraging it to continue, and others accusing it of overreach. The only other point I would add on that was that we didn't see kind of we saw this split among all of our different stakeholder audiences. So it wasn't just agriculture on one side and environmental on the other, but there was a broad cross section that were on the defending of the program's work. Moving on to our developer stakeholders, we wanted to speak to a broad spectrum of the industry. We focused exclusively on residential development, but we spoke to developers of master plan communities. We spoke to developers focusing exclusively on affordable and workforce housing. And we also spoke to developers that focused on redevelopment, mixed-use development, and other infill projects. We wanted to talk about market forces, county policies, redevelopment, affordable housing, and the community input process. Our developers had, again, with our previous two stakeholder groups, more consensus than disagreement. By and large, they felt that Hillsborough County is taking proactive steps to encourage affordable housing. They spoke to several different policies, whether that's an expedited review or different bonuses for affordable housing projects, as signs that the county is moving in a great direction there. They also stressed the concern or the blocking veto process that the NIMBY or not in my backyard sentiment can bring to new development and redevelopment. We saw an equal concern about NIMBY sentiment for both types of development, that is greenfield and redevelopment. Specifically, the concern was about uncertainty, this idea that you can have almost everything in place and have a lot of things approved, and then have something get torpedoed at the last minute was presented as a big obstacle. There was a consensus among developers that the comprehensive plan could use an update. They largely cited population growth changes and the plan's relative age as the reasons why. The developers generally had great praise for county and planning commission staff as professional and timely. We wanted to talk to developers about redevelopment, specifically outside and in unincorporated Hillsborough County, rather. We asked why redevelopment wasn't taking place more, and they, in every case, spoke to market forces as the reason behind that. In general, because the value of land is higher in the urban core, that's where the project money is flowing to. Perhaps unsurprising, developers argued that increased impact fees and other regulations would increase the price of even the most modest home construction. In terms of where they disagreed, opinions differed on the value of the urban service area. Some developers emphasized its importance, while others presented it as a barrier to developing lower cost housing. There was some disagreement on the value of designating areas for increased infill, with some of our stakeholders indicating that only market forces or substantially greater county action would affect decision-making when it comes to that. And there was a strong disagreement on the relative developer friendliness of Hillsborough County. Some indicated that the county had become anti-growth, whereas others took a more nuanced approach and indicated that this managing growth phase is something that you see in more urban areas across the country. So after speaking to all these stakeholders, we had a very detailed view of many of the different issues affecting Hillsborough County on this subject. Following that, we developed a survey instrument and deployed it to 1,300 residents of unincorporated Hillsborough County. I emphasize that again, unincorporated Hillsborough County, to understand their feedback about population growth and new development within the county. We called a mixture of both landlines and cell phones from January 22nd to March 11th of this year. On average, the length of the survey was approximately 11 minutes, which is right around the sweet spot of 10 minutes as is standard for surveys like this. And our margin of error is a very impressive 2.71%. We wanted to make sure, and really this was our biggest, most critical aim with this survey, that we had a sample that was representative of unincorporated Hillsborough County. So we wanted to make sure that our demographics of this sample were reflective of what the American Community Survey or the census has for unincorporated Hillsborough County. So we looked at the kind of the typical variables of gender, age, race, ethnicity, but we also included things like education, location, and homeownership status. Homeownership being, of course, very important to this subject matter. Our census demographics are here. I'll move quickly here. Just to indicate that our sample at the end of our analysis ended up matching the American Community Survey estimate exactly for race, ethnicity, education, age, homeownership, and gender. We collected some other demographic variables that we did not control our sample for, but we were still very pleased with the healthy distribution of them, and we performed some analysis on some of these variables in our full report. Those variables are housing type, household income, whether children are in the household or not, as well as our regions. We broke the county into 3 regions. You can see these on the map here. And tenure, which is defined as how long someone has lived in Hillsborough County. So we wanted to move quickly through this point, but this is just a strong indication that we have to consider whenever we look at survey data. These dots represent the addresses of our respondents. We asked respondents to provide the community type designation, so rural, suburban, or urban, that they felt that their community was. And as you can see from the very random sort of approach to these 3 different colors on this map, there is often some widespread confusion about what constitutes a rural, suburban, or urban area. We did not provide definitions for these to the residents. We wanted to illustrate the point that even though most of the people in this audience recognize that South County is not urban, there are many people in our sample that do believe that as well. So do consider that when you have outreach to rural or suburban areas, that many people have a very different definition of what those things may be than what is common in the literature. So these next few slides speak to what we call the residential decision-making factors. It really speaks to what the individual respondent looks for in a community. We asked people to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how important it is that they live in a community with one of these characteristics, and they went through the list at random. Overall, residents prioritize characteristics related to family and neighborhood amenities over factors involving connectivity and transit. So when we see that the #1 ranked item is that the community is a good place to raise children, we see other factors like convenient to safely walk places be very high up on the list, but commute times or convenient access to public transportation had a decidedly more muted reaction, with only about 1/3 to half of residents saying that it was a 5 or very important. Some of the categories that we used in that previous question were actually leveraged by a nationwide study of Americans living in suburban areas conducted by Pew Research. What we found by including these 4 categories is that although Hillsborough County residents place a higher importance on all 4 of them, the ranking of these categories, or the relative importance of each, is the same as the national average in the entire country for suburban dwelling Americans. This is probably the most important slide in the presentation. So housing economics provides us with this concept of a housing trilemma. Generally, you are only allowed to pick 2 of these 3 factors when it comes to a home purchasing decision. You can have housing affordability, you can have a large value for your dollar or bang for your buck in terms of how much house you get, and you can have location. So we model these by using the commute length, housing affordability, and size of one's home and yard as our three parts of the trilemma. Because you can have two, for instance, you can have a cheaper home that's farther away from the urban core that is pretty large, or you could have a expensive home right in the urban core that's also large. You can really have any combination of these two. To simplify this for the respondent, we asked them to indicate which one of these was the least important when considering their choice of where to live. So when we consider that this is the least important, commute times were the least important factor for our unincorporated Hillsborough County residents. This is a little bit of a sorting matter because by choosing to live in unincorporated Hillsborough County, many residents have already made that decision at the time of their purchasing a home. But the other important factor to consider here is that by deduction, housing affordability is the most important characteristic that residents in unincorporated Hillsborough County have. The only other point I would make on this slide is that there's not a lot of regional variation between the three regions we studied of unincorporated Hillsborough County, but South County does place the greatest emphasis on affordability. The next question we had was about the desire to relocate, and we also took some cues from our friends at Pew to explore this question. So we asked residents whether they would move to a different community if they could. And what we found is that they were much less likely than the national average of suburban Americans to indicate that much. However, there was some regional variations, with the West region having the fewest and the East region having the most that were expressing a desire to move. With that said, this was never more than a third of the sample for any of these areas. Most residents are happy with their current home. When somebody indicated that they would like to move, we asked them whether they would like to move somewhere that is urban, rural, or suburban. And what we found is that many more than the national average were interested in moving somewhere that is rural. We wanted to explore that a little bit more, so we asked some open-ended questions asking residents for their reasons behind that. In general, for those that wanted to move, they emphasized things like the family-oriented lifestyle. That was first and foremost. This idea of, I want more land, I want to be farther from my neighbors, I want to have a big picket fence so that my kids can play in the backyard with the dog. Those were all some of the big factors that we heard. The second and third factors had to do with there being too many people in the area they currently live and the desire to have their own home. For those that didn't want to move, generally, they were just happy with their current situation. They either loved their current community, they were generally happy, or they had some combination of either enjoying the peace and quiet or appreciating the things to do in their current communities. When we review this slide, I want to be very, very careful. We collected this information at the beginning of this year when the COVID lockdowns were still having some lingering effects. There's only really two big takeaways here. The first is that as of that time, 15% of unincorporated Hillsborough County residents were working remotely. And the other point is that residents in South County had significantly higher commute times than the other two regions we studied of unincorporated Hillsborough County. We also wanted to talk about public transportation, getting to the end of this now. And we found that 15% of residents indicated that they would be open to using public transportation if it were more convenient or available. One thing that we really wanted to explore during the COVID time was whether COVID and the pandemic had any sort of depressing factors that would dissuade residents from using public transit. And in general, we did not find that at all. And what we found instead was that residents with any sort of transit access generally indicated that they had no need for public transit. So this slide to the end speaks to the county policies section. So in the last few slides, we've talked about residents. They value housing affordability most of all. They value having a lot of bang for their buck, and they don't mind having a little bit of a longer commute. Now, here they give their feedback on county policies. So the first slide here is we call it the sprawl slide, even though we didn't use that word because we wanted to keep it very neutral. 66% of unincorporated Hillsborough County residents believe that widespread development outside city centers is an issue facing Hillsborough County. When we asked them why, they largely indicated that there was just too much going on all at once, or they raised issues related to traffic or the environment. We asked 3 more questions about major county policies, and these were in an agree or disagree format. A resounding 91% of unincorporated Hillsborough County residents believe that the county should discourage or limit new development to protect agricultural and environmental lands. This is a very big number that you very seldom see in a public policy poll like this. 71% of unincorporated Hillsborough County residents believe that the county should encourage each part of the county to have its own community identity. And lastly, 65% of unincorporated Hillsborough County residents believe that infrastructure and services have not kept up with growth over the past 10 years. Because infrastructure and services cover so many different things, we wanted to follow up a little bit more with that. And that leads us to our next slide. So we asked this in 2 different ways. The first was the top of mind, single most biggest ticket item. And overwhelmingly among these residents, that was roads. Public transit and schools also factored in, but much less than roads. Because we had a feeling that roadways might be the number 1, we wanted to go through a list of a few more just to get the public's perception on each. So following that top of mind question, we then asked about each of these infrastructure items. 90% or 89% said that roads had deficiencies compared to how the county has grown. And then there was about a 50-50 split for public transportation and sidewalks and bike lanes. So even though there wasn't a great interest in using public transit among many of our respondents, still 50% of them roughly felt that there was a lack of investment that was a problem. For all of the other infrastructure and service items like police, fire, schools, trails and parks, I could go on, the vast majority of unincorporated Hillsborough County residents felt that those things had kept up with growth over the past 10 years. So just to wrap up here, I know I've maybe extended my time a little bit. There's sometimes a conflict between residents' public policy preferences and their personal desires. Residents tend to want, especially in unincorporated county, to go somewhere that's a little bigger, maybe a little bit more rural or a little more remote. If they say they want to move, it's often to somewhere that's more remote. But at the same time, they broadly support efforts to limit development outside of urban areas, especially to protect agricultural and environmental lands. They generally agree that widespread development is a challenge that's affecting Hillsborough County. Our rural stakeholders have sort of a similar attitude where they want to keep their land or the rights to develop it, but they also support this idea of preserving the rural lifestyle within Hillsborough County. Our residents more generally felt that roads, public transit, sidewalks, and bike lanes are the infrastructure items that have not kept up with growth the most. For other infrastructure and service items, they broadly agree that these things have kept up. And again, as we mentioned with public transit, although most unincorporated residents did not express an interest in taking public transit, only about 15% said that they were amenable to it. They did largely agree that public transportation infrastructure was lacking in investment and should be improved. And recognizing that I think I went over about 5 minutes, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. All right. Being that there is no action on this item, I will go ahead and open it up to the commissioners for comments or questions to staff on this item. Commissioner Bernstein, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you for that presentation, and a lot of the information was illuminating. I just had one specific question. There was a reference to the initial survey among developers, and one of the comments generally referred to the notion that the comprehensive plan could use an update. My question, I guess, is whether you obtained any granular, more detailed information on that, or was that just a general observation?
I would say that it was more of a general observation. So there were several developer stakeholders that spoke about expanding the urban service area. The I-4 corridor came up multiple times, but I would also indicate that others did not mention any specifics and just mentioned that the comprehensive plan was old and needed to be updated.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Commissioner Kress, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Robert. Just a suggestion. I think I remember the statistics that said 15% would be interested in taking public transit, but I believe it said 9% already were. So I think
that's a true statement.
Might be good to point that out. So it's actually higher than 15%. And then I wondered if there was any correlation made in residents' mind between housing affordability and the cost of their commute. They acknowledge their long commute times, but do you think those dollar signs factored into the cost of their house as well?
I think that's a very difficult thing to assess. It's very difficult to untangle housing costs from transportation costs because there's a relationship between them. Cheaper housing usually means more expensive transit, but I don't know that that's always top of mind in the residents' minds, and our research did not specifically explore the transit cost question in great detail.
Thank you, Commissioner Kress. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to find out, roads were continuously brought up, and did any residents mention that for the Transportation Act that was unfortunately, shot down. Did anyone bring that up as, hey, had this gone through, or any upcoming new Transportation Act or tax, I think that, it's forthcoming from the county, that either one of those will address their needs, as it relates to roads?
Generally, no. When an open-ended question in a phone survey typically does not allow for more than a 1 or 2 sentence response. That's typically how long the respondent will provide. There may have been some mentions of it, but it was not enough to rise to a level of having its own category in this report, for example.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that this was done before the Supreme Court had made their decision, if I'm right on the timing, these interviews, so it might not have happened yet, too.
A large part of the project was kind of during the limbo phase, but I would need to cross-reference a few dates to confirm that.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Yes, Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. I'm looking at this slide, how long is your typical commute to work? And the West stood out to me because growing up in that part of town, or that part of the county, and for that matter, my parents almost exclusively working west of at least 275 the entire 30 years we've been here. It had the lowest percentage retired. And I know you mentioned earlier that it also had the highest percentage of folks who thought that the infrastructure had kept up. So with that in mind, how much were you able to figure out where people worked? Because with that part of the county, and we have experts who are sitting around this table, so they have better knowledge than I would. I tend to think that a lot of the land that's been preserved has already been preserved. So there isn't as much infill, number one. But number two, the Veterans Expressway has been improved. Hillsborough Avenue has been improved. I think Dale Mabry has been improved to the extent at which it can be improved. Citrus Park Drive is going in. Limeball has been extended. There really aren't many transportation projects left in West County other than transit. So going back to that typical commute slide, are you able to determine how much of those areas are commuting to work within those areas? Because if you're living, say, in West Chase, I've always felt that if you live in West Chase, you work in West Shore because you're not going to go downtown because the traffic is too bad. Whereas someone in East or South County really has the options of downtown, USF, and even potentially McDill.
I do not believe that we asked about the work zip code. We've done that in other surveys. Generally, we are apprehensive about asking people for specific addresses for all of the privacy, and asking somebody on the phone for their address of their employment might be a little bit aggressive. So I would rather defer to your experts. I don't think we have any great reading on where people were going to work, only just their commute times.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. Were there any more comments from the commissioners? For my part, I just wanted to say I didn't have any questions. I thought the presentation was very informative, enlightening, I believe it was said. Lots of great work, and I look forward to it going forward. So,
thank you.
All right, seeing no more questions in the room or no more hands raised on the WebEx, I will thank you for the presentation, and we will move on to the next one. All right, 4B, Hillsborough County Community Vulnerability Study. And the presenters are Brian Cook and Kevin Moran.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Diego Guerra, Planning Commission staff. Next presentation, Hillsborough County Community Vulnerability Study, presented by Brian Cook, USF, and Mr. Kevin Moran, Division Director for the Environmental Management Division for Hillsborough County.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kevin Moran with the Hillsborough County Environmental Services Division. In November of 2017, the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners, sitting as the Environmental Protection Commission Board, were presented with a long-term risk due to rising sea levels. The board directed county staff in conjunction with Planning Commission and EPC staff to assess the threats from climate change and sea level rise. We contracted with the University of South Florida's Florida Center for Community Design and Research to complete the requested study. This effort included data collection analysis, developing and implementing assessments for a number of specific vulnerable communities, GIS analysis, including mapping threats and developing mitigation strategies to resolve those threats. In collaboration with the USF FCCDR and the partnership with Hillsborough County County Planning Commission, we've created proposed policy changes that will help our community to be more resilient as the climate changes, storm events increase in number and become more extreme, and the Bay Area waters rise, creating the need for land use and building code regulations. Additionally, this effort allows the county to meet the requirements of Senate Bill 1094 adopted by the Senate, which requires all coastal municipalities in Florida to address the perils of floods within their comprehensive plans. The methods and tasks used to complete the community vulnerability study have been recognized throughout the state and are being used as a model to complete vulnerability studies in other communities. We hope to be a step ahead to do this work and well positioned to pursue potential resiliency funding from the state that was recently approved in the budget. Also, potential exists for other funding and implementation of mitigation strategies that make Hillsborough County a better place to live. Brian Cook and Terrence Sabia with the FCCDR are going to present the findings of the Community Vulnerability Study and Mitigation Guidebook. Brian?
All right. Hello. Thank you, Kevin. And let me get my screen shared here. I think we're all set. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, this is a presentation of the wrap-up of the Community Vulnerability Study. The project has been concluded as a three and a half year project in total. We recently presented to the EPC our final products and recommendations, and so are following up with you all here also. Okay, so there I am. That's me, Brian Cook, and I've been working with Terrence Sabia with a host of other people. I think that's the next slide, but we are from the Florida Center for Community Design Research at University of South Florida. Our center there is in the School of Architecture and Community Design, and so we are there as a resource to assist the citizens of Florida in the creation of more livable and sustainable communities. So we do urban design work, coastal resiliency work, and so work locally as well as regionally and throughout the state. So for this project, we had a pretty expansive team. We're in the School of Architecture and Community Design, but we teamed up with the College of Public Health so that we had input from them also. And then along the way, we also had engineering students and graduate students involved, planning students as well. So and then this project was supervised by Sean College and Jean Henry along the way, and as well as with Kevin and Troy from the county. And so it was a great collaborative effort. And you see us all there with our lenses of resiliency that we were putting on in one of our workshops. So if you want more information about the project, all the documents can be found online. And but I just go to that. So if you type in, easiest way for me is Google. So if you type in Hillsborough County Community Vulnerability Study, you can go to that website. And in that section, you have the 3 main documents that are at the top. And then you have a list of other documents, including maps that we used in order to develop research to substantiate the project. So that can all be found online. So what is this thing, the Community Vulnerability Study? All right. It is just that. It's a study. This does not determine any final policy. Nothing is enacted because of this project. But as a study, it's meant to inform and provide recommendations for a few different policy documents. One of the main ones is the comprehensive plan. And I think actually today, Diego's actually presenting about the coastal management element. So many of these recommendations will go towards and be included into the, if approved, into the coastal management element. As well as in other places, possibly throughout the comprehensive plan. And that is going towards, as Kevin said, Senate Bill 1054 or 1094, 1054. But for perils of flood, which is a state mandated legislation that we must meet. So then also the study is informing the local mitigation strategy, which is created by the county, but also inclusive of cities within the county. And so our work also went towards informing that document, and as well as other planning, emergency plan documents, creating general understandings of our community and opportunities for moving forward. So as a study, it's kind of working between all those things. So for the comprehensive plan, there's 6 mandates set forth by the Senate Bill 1094, peril of flood, which is the first 3 you have to do work towards. So those include reducing flood risk, which is sort of about mapping and planning efforts that you have to commit to. Removal of coastal property from flood zones. So generally that amounts to committing to acquisition of properties or property constraints. And then you have reduced losses for flood insurance, which are mitigation efforts that the community will take and put into their comprehensive plan and commit to. So those are all things that you have to sort of work at. The other 3 requirements, construction requirements, coastal construction control line, which we don't have to worry about in Hillsborough County, and the community rating system, which we just heard we're trying to commit to a level 5. Those are really boxes that have to be checked. So that's the way, these are the things that we're trying to meet through the project. And then with the local mitigation strategy, we worked on the flooding components. So with the project, we began by looking at the vulnerabilities and doing an assessment of the county. and really trying to expand our understanding of vulnerabilities. And I'll get into that in a moment. But then after doing that, and there are quite a few maps that are available, then we got into a expansive literature review and research analysis of mitigation strategies, both within our state, nationally, and internationally, looking at precedents and ways of moving forward. And then the volume 3, the last stage, is to provide our recommendations. So here are all of those different things, the products that you'll find on that website. So, okay, being that this is a kind of a brief overview, I'm just going to be sharing parts of it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the recommendations. So with the vulnerabilities, our research is looking at the year 2045, since this is, we're investigating aspects of sea level rise to see how that impacts future scenarios at our coastline, but also in some slightly inshore areas. But we're looking at year 2045 with the high scenario of the trajectories established by the Client Science Advisory Panel from the Tampa Bay Regional Resilience Coalition. And then we used categories 1, 3, and 5 to do the analysis and for the assessment to see what, which things are at risk to flooding. And then through our research, one thing we really identified that I think helped the project is that each of the vulnerabilities and also mitigation strategies should really be viewed through all 3 of these lenses. Typically, you often see with an assessment for something like flooding or sea level rise, they tend to focus on the built environment, so structures and infrastructure. But I think guided by our public health friends that were with us on the project, really help us to recognize that the people are very important and really at the crux of the matter when considering both vulnerability and resiliency, that people are what make us resilient in many cases. And then also in a parallel track is the ecology or the environment that we're in, and that there are also vulnerabilities or risks associated to flood for our ecological environment. And that also as mitigation strategies, that our environment does provide value and benefit and protection. So we would layer those things on top of each other so that, and for example, if you're looking at something like hotels, where are they vulnerable, but also how? When you look at them through these different lenses, hotels not just as a structure that maybe we'll have to replace after a major hurricane storm surge or something, but also that hotels have a whole population of people that are maybe not familiar with the area or that need to be evacuated before a dramatic hazard scenario, excuse me. But also that hotels tend to house post-disaster workers. So they're the ones that get us back up on our feet, get things up and running and operational. So hotels play a role in that also. And and that also, so for example, if you look at hotels in Hillsborough County, one of the things we found was that in the year 2045, under a Category 3 hurricane storm surge, it's approximately 36% of all the hotels in Hillsborough County are within that zone, so potentially affected, which is a large portion, a third of our hotels being impacted by a Category 3 hurricane. So that in itself is something to consider, but then also hotels, say from the ecologic point of view, is that those hotels tend to be right on the waterfront. And so maybe having hardened shorelines, larger structures, parking lots, that kind of thing. And so thinking about how those hotels on the waterfront are impacting our coastal environments, and especially with sea level rise as waters move up, and we have to consider things like habitat migration, things like that. So all of those vulnerabilities, you can find in this report. So there's an executive summary for you to peruse. There's a very shortened executive summary, but then it also gets into the different categories and identifies different areas. And then it also discusses compounding effects. Looking at things that are sort of multipliers of vulnerability when overlaid on top of each other. And in order to address these things cohesively, we created these two maps that overlay the different vulnerabilities by area so that you can find out where there are certain concentrations of vulnerability, which I think is a useful tool both in thinking about like damage control, but also mitigation strategies that new projects should try to meet multiple of these challenges as we are spending money with capital improvement projects or whatnot. So now we get to the recommendations. Really, the main document that is being submitted for comprehensive planning is the one on the left, and that's in the can be found on the website. On the right, though, we also did projects with students, and there's some kind of nice ideas developed through student projects about potential planning strategies, especially at a system-wide scale. So also something that you might take a look at. Within this, the recommendations and strategies, another part was looking at the process. We were asked to evaluate what is the process that Hillsborough County is going through in all of their different documents. So you have the CMP, LRTP, LMS, you have all these acronyms of policy documents, and how they're being accomplished. It kind of, they are affecting each other. And so we put forth, as we were requested, a process that maybe streamlines and creates efficiencies for these different documents and how they could inform each other and how you can be accomplishing multiple goals by going through some of these processes. So that's in the document also and explained. In order to come up with the recommended policies, we did research of multiple different communities within Florida for what policies are they putting in their comprehensive plan in order to meet the criteria for peril of flood. And then we also were taking these kind of mitigation strategies and design thinking into our recommendations. So I'll just share a few of them, maybe some of the ones that I wouldn't say controversial, but maybe more commitment. And then there are also multiple or many more within the document. But just to share a few, one that was often found in the literature is to take a 50-year approach, especially with sea level rise, thinking about new construction and permitting and projects, and that we're taking this 50-year perspective on and incorporating aspects of sea level rise, some kind of agreed upon scenario or trajectory so that we're building towards our future. Ensuring that sheltering needs are met. We didn't do a sheltering study, so not necessarily that our sheltering needs are not being met, but we did put in there to consider all of these different things, people with pets, people of different cultures, and there's some making sure that those needs are met is an important aspect. Seawalls, supporting the elimination of vertical seawalls. This is, I think, an adapted recommendation from a policy that's already in the CARE document. Transfer development rights, we just heard about those. Through our study, this actually seems like a really great way to try to direct development in sort of a free market way. And the way that works is that you have sending areas and receiving areas, and that you put valuation on top of the properties in the sending areas so that developers can purchase that valuation, therefore providing value and asset for the homeowner or property owner that's going to be vacating their property. and then applying that to areas within the county where we're looking for to apply density. Develop priority areas for land acquisition, considering developing overlays that pertain to sea level rise. Policy recommendation to promote a disclosure program, so informing the community through some kind of disclosure program about properties that are in some kind of hazardous situation, especially as our climate and coastal environment is changing. And something to note with all of these is the language. So some of them say encourage, some are very much more committal. So those are things to consider as we go forward. But one more is to encourage that utility lines be placed underground because they do affect tree canopy, which has kind of a systematic effect. And then within our document, we have the recommended policies. So you'll find all those here. They are categorized. And, there just isn't enough time to go through all those now. But then we also have some that were deemed as long-term recommendations. So maybe things that we're not ready to commit to now, but possibly going into the future. Or if people, if it's determined that these are something we want to commit to now, they're at least documented. And then since we did all this research and not everything we found related directly to peril of flood, we also had other resiliency policies documented as well for people to look through. So with that, I will conclude. I think that's the last slide. And so, yeah, I'll take any questions and I'm glad to provide any further information as needed.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. All right, open it up to the commissioners for any questions or comments on this item. Commissioner Powell, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really loved that presentation. One of the things that stood out to me the most right away was your recommendation on burying utility lines, so that way we can preserve trees. I've had my issues with that in the past, brought that up before. I'd like to bring it up again. My understanding that there really isn't anything that the county can really do about that, though, so that seems to be more controlled by the state legislature. But in my understanding that that's something that we might have, the authority to sort of correct now?
I don't know about the authority to do it. It's more working with the utility companies and informing communities that, it ends up being a subject to cost, I think is one of the big issues. But so the county could provide cost offset possibly, or other ways of working with communities in order to make that a possibility. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Are there any more comments? Yes, Commissioner Linkus. Go ahead.
Thank you all. This was a really interesting presentation, and I just want to commend the engagement that happened here, because this was a multi-year effort, and the collaboration across the different schools at USF, including public health, urban planning, School of Architecture, was a really cool opportunity to encourage collaborative thinking. And then also, I know, speaking for the urban planning students, the ability to kind of help write code language on these or do GIS work on these emergent topics is so impactful to their education. So it was a very important way to kind of connect our future planners and our future citizens to these critical topics.
Thank you, Commissioner Linkus. Good comments. Yeah, Commissioner Dowdy, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Brian, for the presentation. I've been on a number of meetings over the course of the past couple of years that Brian's been in, being on the local mitigation strategy working group and going along. And I'd like to basically say that I love the recommendations that they've come up with, conclusions and stuff, especially a 50-year planning horizon for capital improvement projects. A lot of times the design life of the stuff we're putting in the ground is 50 years, so we might as well be looking to make sure that it continues to function for its whole period of time. And there are a number of our adjacent communities that are already incorporating the sea level rise predictions into their designs to try to another way to continue to plan for the future. So I wholeheartedly support it. And most of you know I'm a flood guy, so near and dear to my heart. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dowdy. Excellent comments from the commissioners. Were there any more comments from the commissioners on this item? I'm not seeing any online. I'll give it a minute and just say for myself, I echo everybody's comments here. I think it was a great presentation. I like the way the comments are being separated to what we want now and things that may come longer term that may need to be looked at a little bit more. I think that's a smart way of approaching things, but I echo sentiments of everybody. I look forward to these things being finalized and us seeing all that good stuff come forward before us again. So thank you for the presentation, and seeing no more lights on and no more hands online. Thank you for the presentation, and we will move on to our next item. That is item 4C, HCCPA 2011 Residential Plan 2 Future Land Use Study, and the presenter is Marion Abrahamson.
Hello, everyone. Just 1 minute. Okay, can you all see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Okay, great, thank you. All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Marianne Abrahamson, Planning Commission staff here to provide a briefing on the RP2 land use study. I'm joined by the project consultants, Jared Schneider and Clarence Eng with Kenley Horn, and we are available to answer any questions you may have following the brief presentation. Today we'll provide a recap of the study purpose, provide a summary of the topic meeting held this spring, cover policy changes that have come as a result of stakeholder feedback, and move into other recommendations and end with next steps. Here is a map of the study areas represented in pink and yellow. The pink area is the area in which the moratorium currently applies. Just as a reminder, on certain issues which are not included in this study are the following: the environmentally sensitive land credit amendment, often referred to as the wetland density credit. This is now a separate amendment. Also, the new policies will not affect unaggregated parcels under 50 acres in the North Village Plan area or under 160 acres in the Vaughan Village Plan area. Those properties are not being proposed for consideration of densities over 1 dwelling unit per 5 gross acres. Another issue outside the scope of the study is broader infrastructure concerns outside of the study area. So let's see, in 2021, we have held 5 in-person meetings with the community listed here, with another in-person open house currently scheduled for June 24th. All meetings have been recorded with materials available virtually. So some primary issues of concern existing at the start of the spring meeting series were the compatibility between rural character and new growth, the need for better infrastructure, and the desire for consistency and predictability in how future development unfolds. Throughout the meeting, certain points of consensus were established for items such as maintaining the rural character and encouraging agricultural spaces, including varying home types, the preference of large lots to open space, the importance of buffering and screening, targeting specific offsite commercial locations, and the use of lighting standards called dark sky. As a result, subsequent policy changes were focused on the development pattern, open space, and the community benefit options. The next few slides will provide a little bit more detail as to how those aforementioned policies are proposed to be modified from what was presented earlier this year. So regarding the perimeter buffer and screening, the perimeter lots are now proposed to be required around the entire perimeter, except where a neighborhood center is present, and a greater focus has been placed on enhanced screening in the perimeter buffer. So due to stakeholder consensus on the importance of buffering and screening, in addition to preference for larger lots rather than large open space, there has been a shift now in how open space is approached. So the open space percentage will now partially be based on perimeter buffers and screening to encourage the rural community character, with a 2.5% open space minimum internal to the site. That does not mean that the total minimum open space requirement has been reduced from 40 to 2.5%. That just means that the minimum open space internal to the site must be 2.5, while the remainder may exist along the perimeter of the property. So allowable open spaces include agriculture up to 50% of the total open space provided, stormwater ponds along the perimeter, active recreational uses internal to the site, passive recreation, community gardens, and community gathering spaces. So the proposed regulations now call for 2 different lot types rather than 3. It should be noted that providing additional lot types is still included, though, as a community benefit option. Also, after discussions with stakeholders, the minimum lot width has been increased from 40 feet to 50 feet rear loaded, and the single-family residential attached housing type has been removed. This is in response to feedback from both our stakeholders and our elected officials. So one of the changes to note for the community benefit options is the shift from a density-based system to a tiered system. The previously proposed policies assigned a certain density to each benefit, whereas the new proposal streamlines that and instead requires a certain number of benefits based on the project acreage. We'll also consider which community benefit options should shift to requirements like the dark sky standards and which ones should remain. So there's some more work being done on that. The consulting team was also tasked with providing recommendations for future action. These include a compatibility evaluation with community input at the time of rezoning, an updated checklist to be used during the site plan approval process, and the consideration of a mobility plan to address community infrastructure concerns. Some of the issues which continue to be addressed include the relationship between open space and large perimeter lots, the consideration of shifting certain community benefit options to be requirements, as mentioned, compatibility between new development and the existing rural character, and alternative metrics for timing and appropriateness of growth within the rural service area. For this Thursday, we're holding a workshop with the Board of County Commissioners. They will be receiving a slightly extended version of this presentation from the consultant team, and that full slide set is available on the project webpage. And the in-person open house is scheduled for June 24th at Reddick Elementary with sessions at 5 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. And then we head into public hearings in July, August, and October ahead of the end of the moratorium in December. This concludes my presentation. The project team is available to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. I'll send it out to the commissioners on this presentation. Commissioner Powell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mary Ann, for the presentation. I just wanted to see if we could get a copy of those slides, because there was some information that was in there that I had some questions about, but I wanted to study that a little bit more, and I'll just email my questions.
Yeah, absolutely. We can send that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. I just wanted to say that I thought the presentation was pretty good, and I look forward to this one also going forward. I noticed some of the kind of conflicts that were brought up in our first presentation kind of popping their head up here in this South County one, and I just wanted to put the question probably to you, Ms. Zornina, and maybe to you, Ms. Abrahamson, because obviously you're leading this, but have we thought about how to, deal with these things? They're obviously keep popping up again and again. We got them in the study. Pew saw them in their study. We're seeing them in the RP2 study. So we're like shrinking down in scale and seeing the same problem. Are we going to be able to deal with this in the community in some way? Have we given any thought to that?
So by this, you mean the infrastructure keeping up with the growth?
That's one of them. And I think
Okay.
there was one where they're like, they want to save environmental lands, but they also want bigger houses and stuff like that. So there's
Right.
these weird kind of like,
Yeah. So I'll start with the second one, and Mary Ann can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the RP2 area, we're looking at one of the community benefits being the if a developer wants to dedicate more land for conservation purposes. So trying to incentivize that as an option that a developer might avail themselves of is the approach to that. I do think we've, even for me as a planner, it's taken a little bit of time to readjust from how it's been adopted for the last 20 years with this concept of
large open space and clustering to smaller units, and that they want
larger lots to mimic the rural character, is a shift in the approach on the village, and that might mean a reduction in overall open space. But so we're looking at an incentive-based approach there. The issue of growth and infrastructure keeping up with it is something that, yes, is a reoccurring theme. It's something that Tracy and I were going to address in my executive director's report. We've spent a good bit of time talking about the policy approaches that can be utilized to address that with the county attorney's office. The state legislature in 2011 changed the state law about how we do a lot of things in planning, but one of them being concurrency. And so the fact of the matter is, under the mobility fee system that the county has now, and under state law, new development cannot be on the hook for deficiencies that exist. There are absolutely deficiencies in southern Hillsborough County. And the resource challenges that the county has to meeting those deficiencies, I think were alluded to in the survey and the discussion about the sales tax referendum. So I think we're all well aware of those. But those burdens can't be shifted to the new development. The new development has to can pay their mobility fee, and that satisfies their impact on the transportation system. So that's a hard pill for a lot of the residents in these communities to swallow, because they are faced with commutes that are getting longer because of the growth that's out there. Even when you collect all the mobility fees, it takes a while to collect enough of the fee to go build the project, and then it takes a while to acquire right away and do the design and actually build it. So they're not seeing the improvement concurrent with the development. And so we are exploring with the help of our attorney team, and one of the things I'm going to bring up in my executive director's report is that we've also brought in Carlton Fields, who is our attorneys on the ongoing litigation in the Waimama area, because they're so familiar with these issues, to help us try to craft other timing measures that the board and the community can look to help assess whether or not projects as they come in these areas are appropriate, given that they're outside the urban service area. They're not our first priority for where growth should go. So how can we articulate that in a meaningful way? And I feel like we're kind of threading a needle on that with what the constraints of state law are, but we're working very hard to bring back a product that begins to satisfy some of those concerns. So thank you for the opportunity to address that.
Thank you. Yeah, you pretty much covered it in your opening. The incentivized thing, I think, was a really good thing, that idea of community incentives and using that to kind of bring everybody to the table of compromise, I think is a good way. So I just wanted to make sure we were aware of it. Clearly you are, so good job. Thank you. Were there any more comments from the other commissioners on this item? I'm not seeing any hands online, so we will put this one to rest. I thank you for the presentation, and we will move on to our next item. Item 4E, HCCPA 20-13, Waimama Village Residential 2 Future Land Use. Oop, I skipped one, sorry. HCCPA 20-12, Waimama Community Plan Update, and the presenter is Jay Collins.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. This is Jay Collins with the Planning Commission. Mr. Chair, for your next presentation, this will actually be 2012 and 2013 together, if I can get the slideshow to work for us. There we go. You are correct, sir, that 2012 is the update of the Waimama Community Plan. That is part of the livable communities element of the comprehensive plan for Hillsborough County. as well as some land development code language, looking specifically to implement parts of that community plan in downtown Waimama. 2013 is the WVR2, the Waimama Village Residential 2 policy update. That is a future land use category, as well as some code language to implement that land use category. And so before we go into the presentation, I do want to welcome Terrence Sabia, who is the director of the Florida Center of Community Design and Research. They are the consultants on this project, and Ms. Sabia is here with me today. So when we met with the commission some months back, we basically said, this is what we're doing with our extra time. We're going to go back out and speak with the community, and we're going to run through basically what we had provided to the commission and the board back in January and February. And that is exactly what we did. We've already had 4 meetings. We have a 5th one planned on June 26th. And these meetings have looked at the work products to date and asked folks to please prioritize that work and ask for any type of changes in that work. These meetings have been well attended, anywhere from 30 people up to about 100 people that we've had at some of these meetings, including many of these sessions in Spanish, all of them Zoom recorded and available online, and all of them have had an exercise involved with them. This exercise, a lot of the time, is visual preference. Sometimes it might be putting stickers down on a board. Other times it might be people who are actually writing down what they think of something. We want to make sure that the community has ample ability to tell us exactly what they think of for these plans, not only in a theater setting with 25, 30, 40 people, but also one-on-one working with staff. So some of the first things that we asked folks were to reprioritize the goals of the Waimama Community Plan and those goals that are laid out as policy within the livable communities element. And what we found was that infrastructure in the public realm, education, and the redevelopment of Waimama's downtown was paramount. It was interesting that the Waimama Village Residential 2 fell all the way to the bottom. That might be because, frankly, today, there's not a lot of people living there. There's a lot of development that can occur there, but there's not a lot of people there. So that was one of our challenges, is being able to say, this is still important to your plan, and there is a synergy between what happens in the Waimama Village Residential 2 and with the successful Waimama Community Plan. So that goal and then drill down into some of the strategies and prioritization. So along 674, expanding the water and sewer connection for commercial development and redevelopment. We know that as subdivisions come into the Waimama Village Residential 2, there's going to be an opportunity for redevelopment and commercial development along 674, and we want to have 674 dressed for success. That infrastructure prioritization plan, that takes each one of these and looks at issues, whether it's educational systems, health systems, safety for your roadways, and begins to prioritize it. And then the expansion of internet access. Through the pandemic, this was a very challenging time for us to communicate with folks down there who either don't have access or the Wi-Fi is spotty. So the overlay district in downtown itself. Originally, the downtown from the 2007 plan looks just at primarily 674. We expanded this overlay to include all of the area within the urban service boundary, primarily to create connections between the existing development and the new development that will occur in WVR2. But along the way, we also learned from folks in this community, as you can see, south of 674, there's still an awful lot of vacant land within the urban service boundary. And there will be new subdivisions in that area. So this is important for us to have that conversation with folks about that overlay. That was one of the things that we did. We talked about just the basic idea of the overlay, which to have a unified principle of the landscaping, of bicycle, pedestrian, and also some of the priority to those neighborhood serving uses to make sure that the sidewalks connect. Taking it one step further, we talked about some of those commercial buildings. One of the big things that everybody wanted to have that conversation with us about was, well, what triggers it? So the applicability of the overlay was something we worked hard with the community. So this isn't something where if you're just remodeling your existing structure that it triggers. If you actually expand that structure, that 1,000 square foot structure goes to 3,000 square feet, you trigger something. If you bulldoze your existing building, build all new, you trigger the overlay. Or if there's a vacant property, you trigger the overlay. If you rezone that property, you trigger the overlay. These are the things that trigger it. So the simple idea of somebody wanting to do maintenance and update on their building does not trigger it. Same thing with the residential. We wanted to make sure, as I think Hillsborough County wants to make sure, that in times of natural disaster, we do not put undue stress on people. So by no means would you have to actually adhere to an overlay if a hurricane comes through this area and destroys homes. By no means would you have to actually adhere to an overlay if a fire should go through your home. These are all things that are horrible, but they happen to us. So what about the other side of it? What about if you, as a property owner, say, I'm going to bulldoze my home and build something new? There's a lot of generations that have been living in Waimama for a long time, and they're continuously improving their homes or bulldozing their homes and wanting to build new. Well, no, you do not have to actually adhere to an overlay if all you're doing is redeveloping your existing home site. If you own a couple of acres and you rezone your property, or you take advantage of TDRs, you take advantage of an affordable housing density bonus, you take advantage of any of those incentive-based programs that we've been working with the community for 18 months, that's when you would trigger that overlay. Same thing with mobile homes. This is an issue with affordable housing. The last thing we would want to do is put undue stress on the delivery of affordable housing in this community. So if you have a mobile home today, or you live in a mobile home park, you own a mobile home park, all those rights convey into this overlay. You do not adhere to an overlay, you adhere to the mobile home overlay that already exists on your property. The only time that overlay would kick in is, again, if you were a mobile home park and you decided that you wanted to rezone to single family attached, single family detached, apartment complex, something that's not a mobile home. And we hope that we've worked with enough incentives that we might be able to see some of that density that is actually in that mobile home convert over to those other types of residential uses. Some of the other new policies that we've been working with, such as what Ms. Abrahamson spoke of, is compatibility. We don't want to forget the fact that while we talk about a compact form for WVR2, there's a lot of rural area that it interfaces. So it's that same compatibility issue that you would see up in BOM. We also want to see that extended into WVR2, but we feel that it's probably much more served with some of the screening, buffering, and other open space mechanisms that the WVR2 affords. And then also that timing of growth, the prematurity of growth, and looking for alternative metrics that Ms. Zornita so eloquently spoke of earlier. So going into some of the community benefits, this is something that we've spoken to at length. And again, we had conversations with the community about just that. How do we actually benefit some of this new development so that all of the community gets to reap a benefit? And again, the community benefits are thought of as an enhancement or a replacement to the jobs and employment requirement that existed along 674. So again, part of that is the idea of combining some of these benefits to shorten and also to prioritize that list. We also want to stress about the land dedication for school sites. Well, that is something that we've worked towards to make sure to say that that dedication, again, is not something that is a must. Again, these are voluntary things. These are offerings. So these are things that are worked out between a developer and that public agency. But what we do want to make sure is that there are other types of benefits to support that use going in. So that might be some connecting infrastructure, roads and sidewalks and other connections. Same thing with parks, same thing with trail connections. The last thing we would want to do is create benefits, but have them be islands in a stream. We actually want to make sure that they are connected. The last benefit that we've actually added to this goes back to 674 and back to the language as it stands today, really, is that idea that downtown commercial development can be constructed in the downtown Main Street core. That's that area along 674 going north to Center Street, North Street, right there further to the east of the area in downtown east, and that is about 42 square feet. These are numbers that are coming out of the WTL. So this is that idea of going, what is some small-scale neighborhood residential, not big box residential, but small-scale residential for local employment and local job creation? Again, we looked at the neighborhood elements. This is in the WVR2. And again, this just reaffirmed that the policy is moving in that direction. And again, this is that visual preference that we spoke of. So what are some things that we're still working on? What are some of those conversations that we're talking about? Affordable housing was a big one. At the commission hearing, at the board's hearing, we heard a lot about affordable housing. But we also know that there is outstanding policy right now about density bonuses and the expansion of affordable housing into the rural service area. But we made sure to understand, and people did understand, that you can build affordable housing anywhere in unincorporated Hillsborough County today. It's the incentive-based affordable housing that is only within the urban service boundary. So we're having that conversation with the community, and we'll have that conversation with the board, who ultimately will dictate policy going forward. And also, of course, as you were in a affordable housing density bonus workshop last week, there's a larger conversation at play here than just what is going on in this study in Waimama. So finally, the schedule that we have, again, Saturday, June the 26th, we will be at Bethel Farm Worker Ministry, and that will be on Saturday morning, where we'll be there for a couple of hours going over with the community these proposed changes. And then we're going to go into the series of public hearings that Ms. Abrahamson spoke of earlier. So I want to thank you for your time, and this concludes my presentation. Again, myself, Ms. Sabia, and Ms. Garantiva are all available for any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. All right. Are there any questions on this one from the planning commissioners? Commissioner Powell, I see your hand moving. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. A few questions. The first thing that popped in my mind, when you mentioned that when an applicant, landowner, they rezone their property and then they are going to be brought into the overlay, what would happen? Because I think that's coming down the pipe where, with that rezoning, if they don't do anything within, that 5-year period, now they've rezoned, now they're in the overlay, but if they don't do anything in that 5-year period of time, then their zoning reverts back to what it was previously. So does that also keep them in the overlay, or are they brought out of the overlay? Have we thought about that?
That's a great question. I do wish that we had a member from DSD here to work with that. Ms. Sabia may be able to answer that, but again, if it reverts back to a former zoning, it would revert back to that former zoning. I don't know if Ms. Sabia has anything she may be able to add to that, or if anybody else does.
So I think all I can add to that is that we can look at what the existing language says and how it ties into the provisions that we have under applicability right now for the overlay. Ultimately, the goal of the overlay is to see as many properties as possible to come into it over time, but we'll want to double check that. So it's a great question, and we'll go back and just do a review in terms of what that 5-year time period might look like.
And one thing, if I could add, Commissioner Powell, is that, again, the overlay is not a zoning district. The overlay sits atop this area. So it is tools to incentivize folks to look for an alternative development, but it itself is not the zoning district. You still have your Euclidean zoning districts.
Okay. Another question. Memory serves me correct. I think one of the biggest issues with the community when they came to the board was, that there wasn't enough public participation, that there were a lot of senior citizen residents in particular that they were, did not have access to, reliable internet or any internet, at all. And so therefore they felt like, they were being left out, of the conversation due to COVID restrictions. They weren't able to have, participate in these discussions. So have we been able to address those issues, and have you seen a significant increase in the participation now versus, during, COVID in 2020?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, the meetings that we have had have been in the community. So far we've had 4 meetings at Bethune Park. We've also had a couple of additional meetings, virtual office hours that we're meeting there. We're putting ourselves out there as much as possible. We have had some good feedback, and I would be remiss if I did not say thank you to Waimama Now, our community partners that are out there. They've been instrumental in getting the word out and making sure that folks are aware that this is happening and inviting people to this, since they are day in and day out working in that community.
I would just like to add that I think we've seen a dramatic increase in the participation. And one of the things that I've heard from the team is that every meeting there are new people showing up, which poses a little bit of a challenge, a good challenge, but a challenge to bring them into the fold with educating them on where the community has been in the discussions previously. I do also want to echo Jay's thank you to the community partners, because they've helped with translation. They brought free tacos to one meeting, which got a lot of people there, and to the Parks Department and county facilities, because them opening up the county parks and assisting us with the COVID protocols really made a big difference in us being able to talk one-on-one with folks and interact with the community in person.
And then my last question, not to hog the mic, but when you brought up affordable housing and residents in the rural area, in the Waimama area, like they're looking for affordable housing, a lot of our discussions, and I've heard in meetings on the Affordable Housing Board and just County Commission in general, is related to affordable housing that's transit oriented, and I don't believe that Waimama will probably experience a lot of transit in the upcoming future, at least. So the only other thing in my mind that would be a potential to make housing potentially more affordable is like county regulations. And I brought this up in some other meetings and other boards. If we are not able to do affordable housing, we're not going to be able to get bonuses because of Florida Housing Coalition, how they do their point system and being very close to transit and things like that, it's a big factor. So are we looking at any of our county regulations that make housing per se more costly to build? Because to me that seems like that's going to be the only viable option to making housing more affordable in these outlying areas in Ball and Waimama specifically.
So yeah, that's a great question, and Ms. Sabia may be able to add something to this. I'll just start off with, I do expect to see some of the affordable housing density bonus work that Tyndall Oliver and Associates is working through to address some of those issues through policy, through regulation, through fee. That is one of the questions that we specifically asked folks out there, because infrastructure is so important. So if there was a fee reduction, what would be their take of it? We didn't get a lot of bites on that, but I do think that it's a worthwhile conversation for staff to continue with the community and also bring to the board's attention that there are other tools that the board has at their disposal besides a density bonus. Again, we recommend things, we work through to actually drive out policy, but we don't adopt that policy. I always say that with community planning, it's an open mind, it's a big heart, but it's a small checkbook, right? So that's what I'm working with that community. So that's how we can actually go forward with the policy. But again, I can't tell that community, yes, this is what's coming down the pipeline for you. Ms. Sabia, anything to add to that?
Sure. So one of the things that we've tried to address within the Land Development Code, particularly for the WVR2 component, is to address some of the concerns that the community has in terms of having the potential of more affluent development surrounding what might be a lower income area in the downtown. And so in part, what we've done is look at requiring a mix of housing types and having different lot types and building forms that can provide a bigger range in terms of housing sizes and lot sizes, so that we have everything from the standard house to side yard houses, cottage houses, row houses or townhouses, and even apartment houses or courtyard apartments, so that we can see a diversity of housing within the WVR2 to at least try to address some of those different income levels and household incomes that we see in Waimama. So that's at least one way that we're looking to address it through the policy. And Mr. Collins mentioned some of the other potentials in terms of different types of incentives that may not be looking at density bonuses, but other things that might help encourage affordable housing to happen within the WVR2.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Linkus, please.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Taryn. This is an excellent presentation, and I commend this work that's so valuable for the residents in this area. And I think this comment or question sort of builds on Commissioner Powell's last statement. I guess I'm curious, sort of looking ahead, what are the next steps to getting to the public realm improvements and the infrastructure improvements? Are there ways that you could speak to that might be being thought about as far as how this plan might trigger additional implementation steps that would bring some funding that could support transit, that could support the infrastructure improvements, things like CRAs or other pieces of this moving forward? Are there next steps that you all are looking to begin to bring public investment into this community to realize some of these visions and to help trigger some of the private investment that needs to be compatible here?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Linkus. I'll start off, and then if Ms. Sabia wants to jump in. The implementation portion in this is primarily through three things. There is code for WVR2, the land use. There's code for downtown Waimama. And then there's a strategic action plan. So those code provisions, of course, are looking at some of the specificity for how we might be able to work within the community benefit options to bring some of those things that folks are talking about that is needed, whether they are schools or parks. Or public safety issues with walking and biking. And then the strategic action plan, which Ms. Sabia can speak to, is looking at some of those things that are, I guess, maybe a little bit far afield from our traditional role of planning, but it's important to actually capture those stories so that they can live on after Ms. Sabia and the Planning Commission have left the community. And Ms. Sabia?
Thank you. So the community benefits are intended to try to provide some of those things that we have heard from the community are most important, right? We had them look at prioritizing those livable communities elements and those goals. And so looking at how we could couple benefits with what the community goals were. And what we're seeing is that things that we suspected were really important to the community, in fact, are. And we're seeing that with schools. You've heard us mention schools a number of times. One of the highest ranked community elements that they highlighted was school facilities. The goal of education has risen to number 2 within the livable communities element. So we're starting to see those trends within the community. And so then within the community benefits, the benefit option of being able to provide school site as well as infrastructure to that school site is one of those components. So then we're linking those back to that strategic action plan. And part of what we have written in the strategic action plan are steps, for example, like shared use agreements that could be created with Hillsborough County Schools or even with Hillsborough Community College in terms of having some shared use facilities. So that as different educational facilities are developed, the community may have access to things like the library, which we know is a really important aspect to the community, as well as computer labs or other training facilities. And so it's a little bit of how the different policy documents work together with that strategic action plan. So we're trying to provide them with an advocacy tool that they can use as a community to take those next steps there is a lot of work that the community will have to look at. In terms of, again, that affordability and the transit question, the community in Waimama really does see itself as a community that could have the ability to walk and bike to everything that they need within the community. Biking and bike networks have come up quite a bit. And so, again, that's also one of the community benefits in terms of including bike networks or building a portion of the Waimama Recreation Trail, which would connect new development to existing development in the downtown. And so it is not a traditional form of how we would define transit right now, but it would be multimodal and it would be an aspect that the community has asked for. In terms of other major infrastructure, sewer for improvements in downtown, we're waiting on hearing some timelines right now in terms of what that might look like. So hopefully that answers at least some of your questions, Commissioner.
It does. Thanks for bringing attention to these linkages. And yeah, of course, I think having the plan sets the stage to begin to go a little bit deeper. And it sounds like a lot of this is already in the works. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Linkus. Are there any more comments from the commissioners? To give everybody just a second, I'll add my own comments. I thought the presentation was great. I think I recall back when this first came around being one of the harbingers of community benefit incentives and doing more with that. And I just want to tip my hat to staff and you, Ms. Sabia, that you've really taken that ball and run with it. This idea of going back to the livable community element goals and linking them to that and then carrying that through to the strategic action plan probably takes a little while to sink in a little bit, but once you put it all together in your head, it makes a lot of sense for a good way to go forward and not only bring the community desires to the table, but I'm sort of thinking there could be other desires from electeds or other people who might want to have, you know, certain discussions about benefits they might want to see in there. And that might be a way to find compromise as opposed to just having someone put something in at the last minute and blow everything up. So hopefully when this one comes back with this kind of more strategized way of bringing about compromise, we won't have kind of the disruptions we had last time and it'll be a little bit smoother, but I guess that remains to be seen. That's a shout out to you, Commissioner Dix. I see you on the line there. I know you were a big proponent of getting something done and not wasting time again. So I just want you to know I have an eye on that. And hopefully with this new approach that staff is bringing towards us, we'll be able to find that compromise in the end here. There he is.
You are a gentleman and a scholar, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dix. Are there any more questions or comments from the commissioners? Not seeing any in the room. Not seeing any online. I'll thank you both for the presentation again. And Mr. Collins, are we coming back to you again?
No, sir. That was for both items for 2012 and 2013.
Okay. Thank you very much for both presentations then. And we
yes,
will,
sir. Have a great day.
We'll move on to our next item. It is item 4F, and that will be HCCPA 2110, and that is a comprehensive plan text amendment, and the presenter will be Melissa Dickens.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, are you all seeing the presentation?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to go through this quickly. I know you all have a lot of agenda items still to remain. This is a proposed text amendment to the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. It is the Recreation and Open Space section. This text amendment is a proposed replacement of the existing recreation and open space element that's adopted today. This is a briefing. This will be coming back to you for public hearing next month. And since you are hearing from a few of us about updates to the comprehensive plan, we wanted to have one general overview slide to share where we are in the process and how things are moving along. First, wanted to share that we're continuing our multi-year phased approach to updating the plan, moving forward different aspects of the plan at different times. We're working collaboratively with our technical experts at Hillsborough County and other agency partners to move things forward. We want to continue to make sure that we're putting together language that is implementable, that works for the county and is aligned with their strategic goals and their strategic direction, and working closely and collaboratively with them has been a success in making sure that the comprehensive plan is able to be implemented. In terms of where we are, the One Water chapter was adopted late last year. Environmental and sustainability is actually scheduled for adoption this Thursday by the BOCC. And then today you're going to hear the April cycle amendments, which is this one, the recreation and open space section. You'll also hear about solid waste and coastal management. And one other item I wanted to share, that we do have a centralized one-stop shop, a centralized website for the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Update. And the link there is planhillsborough.org/Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Update. I wanted to share that so that folks in the room, on the WebEx, or watching from the community knew that that was a resource for the public and for the community to go to see a timeline, be able to get involved, and find out additional information. And so now I'll delve into some background on the recreation and open space section. The last time that this aspect of the plan went through a major update was back in 2008. And we have been working collaboratively with our Hillsborough County partners in Parks and Recreation and Conservation and Environmental Lands Management to do a holistic update to this section. We've made some pretty significant changes to the section, not only modernizing and updating the language, but also working to incorporate best practices in parks planning, and also making sure that the comprehensive plan is integrated with and supports the master planning efforts that the departments have been working with over the past several years. And so I'm going to share a few highlights of the update to the recreation and open space section. The first thing I'll say is that right now the current the current recreation and open space element of the comprehensive plan is really silent on topics like equity and inclusivity. These are very important topics, not only in comprehensive planning, but also to the county departments in making sure that the parks are serving all community members. So we have worked to update and infuse these concepts throughout the updated section. We also have some language on access for all community members, regardless of age or ability. We got some great comments from the BOCC at their workshop last week on working to even tighten up some of that language further. We have some language on integrating parks with the built environment and coordinating parks planning with other aspects of planning. So things like making sure that park improvements are aligned with sidewalk improvements, are aligned with multimodal improvements. Those are different ways that we're working to integrate the parks within the built environment. We have some updated language on programming, some updated language on ecotourism and sports tourism, which are important components of the master plans, some language on making sure to continue to have inclusive opportunities for the community to participate and provide feedback. We have some language that we've added on ensuring the feasibility of long-term maintenance of parks. So, you know, of course, looking at construction, but also looking at how these parks can be maintained over time. We have created some criteria for the parks to consider for when they're looking at acquisition. And then we've also included some green maintenance practices and retained the language on environmental protection. And so we have one overall goal that's proposed in the draft, and that's to ensure an integrated system of recreation and resource-based parks that are accessible, inclusive, equitable, and enhance quality of life for residents and visitors in the community. And we have 7 objectives that help support and implement that goal. They are summarized here on the screen. The first is about providing an adequately sited, maintained, and also interconnected system of various types of parks. We have an objective about integrating parks with other aspects of the built environment in a way that is a benefit to the overall community. We have objective number 3 about strategic and complementary partnerships. Objective number 4 is about programming opportunities and ensuring that there's programming that not only reflects community needs, but also furthers other objectives of the community, such as community health. We have an objective on ensuring safe and welcoming and equitable access for all members of the community. Objective number 6 is about continuing opportunities for engagement, providing opportunities for community feedback. And then finally, objective number 7 is making sure to have some language about ensuring the long-term fiscal health of the park system. And wanted to share where we are in the schedule. Of course, today is the Planning Commission briefing. We've already had a virtual public meeting and we had one workshop with the Board of County Commissioners. We're asking for all public comments and feedback by close of business on June 18th so that we will be able to incorporate this feedback and turn it around in time for you all at the public hearing in July. Then after you all provide a recommendation, it would then go to the Board of County Commissioners for their transmittal public hearing. Provided they choose to transmit, that would then go up to the state for state and regional agency review and then come back to the board in October for adoption. And finally, wanted to share that we do have a specific project page. This has been open now for, I believe, over a month, where we have some additional information about the update. It's a great way for the community to find out information, see previous presentations, check out what's new, what's existing. We have the crosswalks that were included in your packet up there as well. And so that is at planhillsborough.org/recreation and open space section. And this concludes the end of my formal presentation today. I am available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Yes, Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I have a few questions. My first question, you kind of related, you just spoke about the schedule. The City of Tampa is also doing a parks plan. It looks like their implementing portion, they have 4 phases. Their implementing portion would start when this schedule ends. Did you, or was there any conversations between the county and city about coordinating, because of the fact that both parks plans, master plans, are happening at the same time?
Sure. So I can certainly speak to that. Myself and Danny Collins on the Planning Commission team have been involved in conversations providing input and guidance to the city on their master plan update. What they're pursuing is slightly different than the comprehensive plan update. So they're doing much more of like if the comprehensive plan is at 35,000 feet, the master plan is kind of the next level down, like maybe 10,000 feet, to continue that analogy. But that has a lot more detail in it. It's a lot more specifics, whereas the comprehensive plan for the county is much more higher level policy direction, setting the long-term policy. But one of the things that we talked about when we met with the city was making sure that we were able to help them make the master plan a success by working to with their team to update, if needed, some of the language within the city's comprehensive plan. So that's something that we're certainly have our eye on. That's something that's certainly on our radar, and we'll continue to be having conversations with the city about that.
Thanks for that, because the other question I had, I personally, I disagree with the notion of sports tourism, because I think, especially in Florida, you have these counties and cities spending millions of dollars on athletic complexes that are not used by local kids. Just, Hillsborough County, I think, spent $15 million on one. I think Pasco County spent something like $30 million on one. And those parks, those facilities are competing with IMG and Disney, which obviously have way more money to spend on those types of facilities. And It's similar to debate of, would you rather have Julie Bean Lane Park or 35 parks that got $1 million each in the city of Tampa? And I think the same has been happening with sports complexes. And so what concerned me going through this was youth sports really was not mentioned. The cost of youth sports programs was not mentioned. Depending upon the sport, whether it be baseball, sometimes baseball you have to buy all the equipment, whereas football, a lot of times equipment is provided and can last for several years, so there's a difference in cost there. Obviously, a program like basketball or soccer may be cheaper, but a lot of times it's pay to play, and the reduction of children playing sports is a concern to me as someone who has a young kid. So I guess what you're saying is something like financing or facilitating or lowering the cost of entry for children to get into sports would not be in this. But so this document would not prioritize how recreational funds are spent, at least as it relates to sports, but instead it'd be related to previous actions by the BOCC or the Tampa Sports Authority or the Convention and Visitors Bureau that decided as strategic initiative to support sports tourism as opposed to allocating those funds to programming.
So I can speak to the points that you made. I think that is an important point. One of the things that we were careful to include was language. If you look at Objective 1.4, we do have some language about prioritizing community athletic facilities for recreation style leagues. So making sure that those community recreation facilities were available and prioritized for members of the community, and providing that opportunity to everyday residents, not just reserving all of the fields for out of town visitors or tournaments. That's something that was a big priority. We also have some language within the document. Excuse me, someone's coming in my office. We also have some language within the document that speaks to making sure that programs continue to be affordable. There's some language in there about continuing to provide scholarships, providing vouchers so that everyone has an opportunity to participate. But I will go back and take a look at how specifically the sports tourism policies are framed. It's something that we wanted to make sure was aligned with some of the strategic plans of some of the master planning efforts that have happened. But certainly it is not the intent of this document to override or be in conflict with the ability of the community to use the facilities. The other thing that I'll say is that this being a very high-level document, the specifics related to costs of specific programs or costs of specific types of sports leagues, that would not come under the purview of this document specifically. That would be handled under other county processes.
Yeah, and thanks for that, because just one more thing, I don't want to take up too much time here. The Objective 1.4, the tourism is mentioned more often than youth, which, that stood out to me. And policy 1.42, benefit, after school activities that benefit youth, youth and adult recreational opportunities. I think maybe the BOCC would think differently, but I think it needs to be made more clear how sports tourism and ecotourism is benefiting the residents. Because especially with the sports parks, residents don't use those unless they're playing on a pay-to-play athletic team and their team has paid the entry fee or qualified via some other mechanism to use those athletic fields.
Thanks for the comments. We will absolutely go back and look at that language. I'll talk with the Parks and Recreation Department and see how we can incorporate those comments. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Marino. Some very good comments. Were there any more comments? Yes, Commissioner Linkus, please. I
would just build on a couple comments from Commissioner Moreno. I think sometimes the sports tourism piece can go beyond sort of the use of the facilities. And I had worked in Sarasota when they brought in the rowing facilities, which is an important part of hotel development, economic development, and kind of building the system of infrastructure for tourism. So I think, potentially there's a way to kind of incorporate the ways that this can go beyond the users of just those facilities and bring broader community benefits. And I do want to echo that I think the role of youth and the importance of parks and youth's lives, both as educational, childcare. There's just such a suite of ways that the community uses parks these days for our youth that go far beyond recreation. And I think attention to just how well developed the youth piece in this is a great comment that I appreciate from Commissioner Moreno. So thank you.
Thank you. Very good comments. Very good comments. Yes, Commissioner Bernstein.
Yeah, Melissa, thanks again for your presentation. I had a specific question on the diversity inclusion aspects you touched on, and specifically whether and to what extent they delve into folks who are developmentally challenged within our community. And I'm thinking about the sensory-friendly park initiative that New Tampa undertook a few years ago. Was there much consideration given to efforts like that, and whether more of them can be undertaken locally going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big priority of the Parks and Recreation Department, and talking with them. I would point to policy 1.5.1. That is where we've tried to not only talk about making sure that facilities are accessible, not only accessible, but also inclusive. We want to, make sure that it's not something that they can, that folks who are using parks in perhaps a wheelchair can just get around. They also are able to participate in activities that would include any kind of neurodiversity and sensory friendly parks. That would also be incorporated within that policy.
Well, I just want to applaud your efforts in that regard. I don't think we can do enough in many cases to support that segment of the community, and for your efforts in making sure that policy is administered and understood. I certainly appreciate the help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Some very good comments. Yes, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, just wanted to echo what my fellow commissioners was bringing up. Within that, policy, do we have anything that would help for citizens with like sensory issues, for like wayfinding, are there like any, things where there would be like markings on the ground to help point them to, like a help area, if they get, flustered or concerned, or, there was an issue and they just are not knowing, where they, are, or where they can go to get help for something. Is that a part of this, or will that be a part of that?
So thanks. I think that's a great question, and another great point. You all are bringing up such important issues. That the concept is supported by the comprehensive plan. So we do have some language about making sure that communications are accessible, making sure there is some language about wayfinding in parks. We can go back and make sure that it's clear that that wayfinding is also for members of the community who may have challenges with sensory processing and things like that. But in terms of the detail about where wayfinding goes, what it looks like, that sort of thing, that would be handled under more closer to the ground planning efforts.
Okay, because there was, when we went out to San Francisco, and there was a workshop, and I forget which county or state that was presenting, but they mentioned that they had gotten a large group of people together, and they had different colors for different things, and so that was what was educated to citizens. Hey, the yellow line means you can go to find help for the police, or for the bathroom and things like that. So I think that if we could have something of that nature, that would be really fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Are there any more excellent comments from the commissioners? All really great comments, really great points. I see Ms. Ornita writing over there crazily, taking notes. They probably thought recreation and open space would be a walk in the park, pun intended, but didn't quite make it. So seeing no more hands raised online or lights on in the room, and my comedy career dying, I will thank you for the presentation, and we will move on to our next item. And that will be 4G, HCCPA 2111, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment. And we are back to Miss Melissa Dickens again.
Yes, that's me. Thank you, Commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. I'm sharing this presentation for you all. All right, are you all seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is HCCPA 21-11. This is a proposed text amendment to the unincorporated Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan. This is for the solid waste section. Similar to parks, the solid waste section update is proposed to replace the existing solid waste element, which is adopted in the plan today. There's no action required today. This is a briefing, and it will come back to you as part of your July public hearing. First, I wanted to set some context for the element and solid waste planning in general within the county. We have been working closely with both the Solid Waste Management Division and Innovation and Resiliency on this update. The last time, similar to parks, that this element went through a major update was back in 2008. Looking at some of the language, it is even older and developed prior to that. We really have a sort of long in the tooth, disposal-focused solid waste element. It's kind of a relic of the prior requirements of what is now DEO, formerly DCA, but it's very focused on disposing of trash that's generated. And at the same time, we're seeing some capacity challenges in our solid waste facilities in Hillsborough County. The resource recovery facility is at capacity, and so as we see the tremendous population growth in Hillsborough County, all of the waste that's generated by that increased population growth would go to the landfill. And so we identified a real need to re-examine the long-term approach to waste management within the county. And we think that the comprehensive plan provides a great framework for shifting the framework for sustainable solid waste management policy. And so some background on the element. It is the first section of the governance chapter of the overall update. As I mentioned, we've been working collaboratively with the technical experts in Solid Waste Management Division and Innovation and Resiliency. And the solid waste section provides this long-term policy for sustainable solid waste management and serves as a tool in the toolkit for the solid waste management folks in a few ways. First, it provides a framework for reducing waste generation and maximizing waste diversion from county operations and county processes. It also directs needed updates to other county documents like the Land Development Code. It's also an opportunity to explore new opportunities for beneficial uses of waste. So thinking about waste not just as something that we have to discard, but really how can it be used as a resource? And then finally, providing policy direction to guide programmatic enhancements and capital projects. And so now I wanted to share some of the highlights of the proposed update to the solid waste section. We're using what we call the integrated hierarchy of waste management. There is a wonderful graphic created by Hillsborough County to show how the integrated hierarchy works. Essentially, it moves from the most preferred approach, which is waste reduction, very cost effective, provides a great way to reducing the overall amount of waste. Then moving into to reuse and repurposing, then recycling and composting, then energy recovery, and finally using landfill disposal as a last resort. So it moves from, it's kind of an upside down pyramid, inverted pyramid, moving from most preferred to least preferred approach. And so we really believe that using this framework, that the county can be a leader in sustainable solid waste management, both in practices in terms of what we're asking the citizens and the residents, but also leading by example. And so we have proposed a shift from this disposal focused plan to one that is centered on this integrated hierarchy. Speaking to the integrated hierarchy, we have expanded sections and additional policy language on waste reduction, reuse, and recycling within the update. We have some new language on leveraging waste as a resource and energy recovery. We also have increased emphasis on coordination, partnerships, and collaboration. So how can Hillsborough County work with different departments, work among organizations in the community to help achieve these goals? And then finally, we also have some clarity on the solid waste facility siting and resiliency. And so we do have one overall goal for the proposed section, and that's to lead in waste reduction, reuse, and recycling in a cost-efficient manner to provide for sustainable solid waste management. And then we have 4 objectives supporting and implementing this goal. The first is about adopting that integrated hierarchy of waste management, again, using waste reduction as the primary approach, followed by reuse, recycling, and energy recovery, with landfill disposal being the last resort. We also have an objective about leveraging waste as a resource and looking at beneficial uses of waste. We have objective number 3 about ensuring the county leads by example through not only facilities and recycling and facilities, but also providing education and outreach to the community. And then we have an objective about continuing resilient and sustainable solid waste management siting and practices that protect citizens and the environment. And you all saw the schedule during the last presentation. Just real quickly, this is the Planning Commission briefing. We're going to close public comments so that we have an opportunity to incorporate any feedback that's received before the July public hearing. It'll go to BOCC transmittal in August, and then adoption is in October. And then we also have a project page for the update to the solid waste section. Again, residents and citizens and stakeholders can see additional information about the update, find out what the schedule is, see presentations from previous meetings, and that's at planhillsborough.org/solid waste section. And this concludes my formal presentation today. I am available if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the great presentation. Are there any comments or questions from the commissioners on this one? Yes, Commissioner Linkus, please.
Thank you, Melissa. I just wanted to say, as a resident of Temple Terrace, we briefly, over the course of the pandemic, had to go without recycling services. And in speaking to some of our commissioners, that was the #1 concern of residents, and the thing that most residents were concerned about is when are we going to get that back up. So I think this is something that really affects everyone who lives in the region, and updating this and making it contemporary and relevant to the environmental and sustainability issues is commendable. I do want to ask one question, though. I wanted to ask about education and whether there's any piece about this, because I always see in my neighborhood a great deal of confusion about what goes in what bin, and I think it's sort of getting everyone all aware of the value of why maybe glass is not being recycled here or there it is, and things like separating and sorting are so important to making these kinds of things work. So I'm curious to just find out if there's an education piece in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the question. That's something that, similar to you might be hearing in Temple Terrace, that the county also strives to make sure that the residents know, don't recycle plastic bags. This goes here, and providing that additional information. We do have under Objective 1.3, we have Policy 1.3.1. That talks about not only recycling but also waste reduction strategies. You did mention the contamination in recycling. That's a big issue, and so that education piece can be found primarily under Objective 1.3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Linkus. Commissioner Kress, please go ahead.
Thank you. Melissa, in the goal, you had the words cost effective, and I know that operating a recycling program isn't always the most cost effective way to deal with waste. So maybe that's an invalid concern, but I just wanted to throw that out. And then I had a question. You referred to county facilities, and I didn't know whether you were also referring to things like the county center and all the different buildings where county employees work, and incorporating, more sustainable practices within the actual buildings as opposed to just like the solid waste facilities.
Yes, absolutely. It's meant to be broad. The same folks from the county side of the house who are working on the sustainability action plan for the county are also involved in the drafting of this update, and that facility is meant to include things like county center, county processes, reusing of county materials. It's meant to be very broad. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments from the commissioners? I had one comment for myself, one question and comment. We'll comment first. I think this is excellent work. This is one of my wheelhouses. I actually teach the Solid Waste Disposal Act, the actual regulation title, and also the Resource Conservation Recovery Act to my environmental regulation students. So I know that upside down triangle image is very familiar to me, and I know that it has been within our federal documents for years now, so it's heartwarming to see it finally make its way down to the county. And a lot of these things that we're bringing up and changing are not really big changes. They've been going on at federal level and national level and state level for a while now, so it's good to see them kind of trickle their way down here and us start to look away from just sticking stuff in the ground as the solution to what to do with our waste, and try to at least look at some other ways of doing some things. And my one question I had for you has to do, because again, this is my wheelhouse, is e-waste. E-waste is a big area that's blowing up right now. Even on the federal level, they're trying to figure out how to get these programs up and running and what to do with e-waste besides shipping it off to developing countries, which is not the best solution. So I'm wondering, has there been any thought from our staff on that particular thing? Because I know in speaking with Waste Management Services for the county in past planning commission meetings years ago, that was something that I asked this question to them too, and they said it was starting to become apparent on their radar, and they started talking about a couple small programs for e-waste and things like that. But as an agency, I'm just wondering if we're aware of that and have given any thought to that going ahead, the growing e-waste problem that's coming.
Yeah, I think that is a great question. In terms of the specifics on e-waste, I would probably need to coordinate directly with, it would be Travis Barnes in Innovation and Resiliency. So I can reach out to him and get a response, not only to you, but we can also share that information at the next Planning Commission meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely not an impediment. Just we're going after it, so let's go all the way. Thanks a lot for the information. Are there any more comments from the commissioners? Seeing none in the room and seeing no hands raised or video online, we will thank you for the great presentation, and we will move on to our next item. The next item is AICP 2112. It's Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment for the Coastal Management Section update, and the presenter is Mr. Diego Guerra.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Diego Guerra, Planning Commission staff. I'll be providing you with a briefing on HCCPA 21-12, the Coastal Management Section update. Coastal Management Section is part of the third phase of the Comprehensive Plan update and part of the Natural Open Space chapter of the Comprehensive Plan, overall Comprehensive Plan update. The current context of the element includes language on estuarine management, beaches and dunes, land use suitability, emergency preparedness, post-disaster redevelopment, public infrastructure, and language specific to Port Tampa Bay. This is a summary from the land use workshops held early last year, in which the Board of County Commissioners provided policy direction that applies to the section update and uses guidance in the overall process. Guidance topics include natural resource management and protection, economic resiliency, growth management and limiting exposure to natural hazards, mitigate the hazards to land development and infrastructure within the coastal high hazard area, and mitigate natural hazards and their impacts to ensure sustainability and resilience of the community. This slide depicts the topic areas discussed in the new section update. I do want to point out that substantial new hazard mitigation and resiliency policies provided by the completed community vulnerability study are incorporated into the new section. In addition to policies specific to land use suitability are proposed to be moved to the future land use element, and policies specific to infrastructure are proposed to be moved to the capital improvements element, which will occur as part of this amendment as well. We did work collaboratively with county staff who assisted in the review and refinement of the language. Approximately half of the language Approximately half of the section is made up of new language, majority of which does derive from the community vulnerability policy recommendations. Due to some similarities of adopted language and some of the recommendations from the community vulnerability study, we were also able to modify and reword some of the currently adopted language to also incorporate those recommendations. The community vulnerability study provided approximately 74 policy recommendations, of which all are incorporated not only into the coastal management section, but other sections and to include the One Water chapter of the comprehensive plan update. The new community vulnerability study policy recommendations address a number of issues, which include public education on risk, development location in at-risk areas, location of infrastructure in the coastal hazard area, minimizing the number of structures in at-risk areas, evacuation and shelter space, natural resources as hazard mitigation infrastructure, and incorporating science and programs into programs and operations. And similar to the previous presentations provided today, this timeline just provides key upcoming dates. We held a public virtual outreach meeting on May 26th and provided a briefing to the Board of County Commissioners on the 8th. The public comment period will conclude in a couple of days on the 18th, which will be followed by the Planning Commission public hearing and Board of County Commissioners transmittal public hearing in July and August, with an anticipated adoption public hearing scheduled for October. And as well with the other section updates that have been presented to you today, we did set up a project page for the coastal management update where the public are able to review the draft, review other background information, and it can be accessed from not only the website, but also from the overall Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan update project page, which Ms. Dickens has discussed earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Another one. We will send it over to the commissioners on this one for questions or comments. Coastal management update. Not seeing anyone in the room, not seeing anyone with their hands raised online. We will thank you for a great presentation, Mr. Guerra. Really good work. Apologies for not introducing you earlier, by the way. They didn't put your name on that vulnerability study, so I don't take blame for that. Thank you. Thank you for the great work, and we look forward to this coming forward again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, on to our next item. It is AICP 1909, Future Land Use Map Amendment, northwest of Boy Scout Road and Grove Lane, and the presenter is Mr. Tony Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tony Garcia, Planning Commission staff. Give me 1 second while I go ahead and get my screen up over here for you. Okay. Can everyone see my presentation?
We cannot.
Well, you cannot. Okay. Great.
So if you go to the share button at the bottom.
Right, I was there. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
If it's 1909, I can run it for you, Tony.
It's trying to connect. I see what it's trying to do. It's thinking. So all of a sudden my let me close that. It is, Hold on. Sorry. Lionel, I'm going to defer to you because I don't, in the interest of time, I don't want to waste any more time, so. Thank you. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Without any further ado, HCCP 1909. This is located northwest of Boy Scout Road and Grove Lane. Next slide, please. On the locator map, one can see that this is located in the northwest section of Hillsborough County. This is located in the rural service area, specifically within the boundaries of the Keystone Odessa Community Plan. Next slide, please. This is a privately initiated map amendment. This is approximately 5.1 acres in size. As you all can see by the aerial before you, these are mostly large lot homes. This has got a significant agricultural presence and rural character up in the Keystone Odessa area. As one can see, as the site is surrounded by mostly vacant land, agricultural lands. There's a couple of orchards to the southwest of it, and there are a few enclaves, rural enclaves in the surrounding area. Next slide, please. The site is currently AR 1 to 5, and most of the surrounding area is also AR 1 to 5. There is a smattering of agricultural estate, 1 to 2.5, to the south of the site, and some residential one further to the south. Next slide, please. The request of the applicant is to go to agricultural estate 1 to 2.5. Next slide, please. So the impacts as far as the acres go, it's going to wants to go from AR 1 to 5, which would allow 1 dwelling unit, to AE 1 to 2.5, which would allow 2. As far as the non-residential potential, 40,000 square feet or 0.25 FAR, whichever is less than 10 under the AR 1 to 5. Or 20,000 square feet or a 0.25 FAR, whichever is less under the AE 1 to 2.5. The reason for the request to change it is 5.1 acres, but we cannot apply the wetlands density credit it's not applicable within the Keystone Odessa area because that particular application is not allowed within this particular community plan. That being said, the site will fall short of the requirement to build 1 unit under the 1 to 5, which is why the request is going to be before you for consideration to go to AAE 1 to 2.5, which will allow really at the end of the day the application of the potential development of 1 unit on the site. Next slide, please. That concludes this presentation. This is going to follow the same schedule that Diego had just shown you. This will come back before you on July the 12th with the idea of going for adoption before the BOCC in August. So this concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. As this item is not for action, I'll open it up to the commissioners for any questions or comments they might have on this briefing. Not seeing any in the room. Not seeing any hands raised online. We'll thank you for the presentation and move on to our next item. 4J, HCCPA 2101, Future Land Use Map Amendment, Valrico Station and Silver Lane, and the presenter is Yanika Mills.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Let me share my screen. Can you all see that presentation thus far?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Again, Yanika Mills, Planning Commission staff. I am here to present HCCPA 2101 Valrico Station and Silver Lane. Sorry about that. Didn't forward to the next
Unica, it's on the, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay.
It seems to be starting on the last slide. So when you get back to your PowerPoint presentation, just scroll up and click on the first slide.
Sorry about that. Okay. Good afternoon again, Unica Mills Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present HCCPA 2101 Valrico Station in Silver Lane. This plan amendment is located within the eastern portion of Hillsborough County. This is a privately initiated plan amendment located within the urban service area, consisting of 2 parcels, totaling a little over 14 acres, and it's not located within a community planning area. Here's an aerial of the site outlined in pink. From this aerial, you can see that there are multifamily uses to the west of the site. There is established single-family residential located south of the site. We have a mobile home park located to the east of the site. There is a railroad track that runs along the eastern portion of the site here. And directly to the north, we have a heavy commercial and a heavy industrial use to the north. As of now, the site is designated as residential 4, and there's a little portion of the site that's designated residential 9. Other future land use classifications in the area include office commercial 20 northeast of the site. We have some residential 6 southeast of the site, and of course, additional residential 20 directly west of the site. And the proposal before you today is to change the future land use classification to residential 20. Currently at a residential 4 and residential 9 future land use classification, the maximum density that could be considered on the site would be 20 dwelling units. Maximum intensity for the residential 4 portion of the site at a 0.25 FAR could be considered for up to over 150,000 square feet. For the residential 9 portion of the site, that has a 0.50 FAR, a little over 8,000 square feet of non-residential uses could be considered on the site. Of course, all of that is subject, the non-residential intensity is subject to commercial locational criteria. As for the potential of the site, with a change to residential 20, excuse me. With a change to the residential 20, a maximum of 296 dwelling units could be considered on the site. However, as the current site exists, there are multifamily dwellings already on the site. So this 296 dwelling units would not actually be realized. As far as the maximum intensity on the site at a 0.75 FAR with the residential 20, over 483,000 square feet of non-residential entitlements could be considered on the site, again, subject to commercial locational criteria. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this proposed future land use designation change.
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Mills. Are there any questions from the commissioners in the room? Not seeing any lights on, not seeing any hands raised for this briefing. We will move right on to our next one. It is HCCPA 2105, Future Land Use Map Amendment, South 70th Street and 66th Street South, and the presenter will be Unica Mills.
Okay, let's share again. Can you all see the presentation for 2105?
Yes.
Again, Commissioner Janika Mills, Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present HCCPA 2105, South 70th Street and 66th Street South. This proposed future land use designation change is centrally located within Hillsborough County. To give you some background regarding the case, this is privately initiated. It's located within the urban service area. The site contains 4 parcels totaling a little over 16 acres, and it's located within the Greater Palm River Area Community Plan. Here's an aerial of the site. The site is outlined here in pink. To give you some background of the area, we have Hartford Street located further north of the site. 66th Street runs along the western portion of the site. As far as uses in the area, we have an established single-family residential neighborhood located south of the site. There are heavy industrial and light industrial uses that run all along the west of the property along 66th Street. There is some scattered single-family residential uses to the northeast of the site. As for the future land use designation, currently the site is designated as residential 6. Other future land use designations in the area include suburban mixed use 6, directly to the kind of northwest of the site. This site that is to the west, that's currently designated as residential, suburban mixed use 6, was subject to a plan amendment just a few years ago from a change to residential 6 to suburban mixed use 6. Other future land use designations in the area include light industrial along the western portion of 66th Street. We have public, quasi-public to the northwest. And of course, we have a large area of suburban mixed use 6 east of the site. And the proposal before you today is to change the future land use designation to suburban mixed use 6. Currently, at its adopted state at a residential 6, a maximum of 98 dwelling units could be considered for the site. As far as maximum intensity, at a 0.25 FAR, a little over 170,000 square feet could be considered, subject to commercial locational criteria. As far as the potential for the site, with a change to suburban mixed use 6, and the maximum density would remain the same. The maximum intensity as far as a freestanding use would also remain the same. If the site were to develop out at either office or a research corporate park, it could possibly be considered for a 0.35 FAR or a little over 240,000 square feet. Or at a light industrial, it would be considered at a 0.50 FAR or over 350,000 square feet of non-residential uses, of course, all subject to commercial locational criteria. The major change with the proposal for suburban mixed use 6 is that the site could now be considered for industrial uses and open storage uses if the SMU 6 were to be approved. That concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2105. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this one? Seeing none in the room and no one with their hands raised online, we will thank you for the briefing and move on to our next one. Item 4L, HCCPA 2106, Future Land Use Map Amendment, Interstate 4 and 62nd Street, and the staff presenter is Andrea Papandreou.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Andrea Papandreou, Planning Commission staff. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
So good afternoon, Andrea Papandreou, Planning Commission staff, presenting on HCCPA 21-06, Interstate 4 and 62nd Street. So the subject site is within the Hillsborough County boundary and is just north of the city of Tampa boundary. This is a privately initiated map amendment. It's approximately 104.96 acres and is south of Interstate 4 and west of 62nd Street. Existing land uses surrounding the site are light industrial to the south, residential and commercial uses to the east, and Corporex, a corporate research park, to the northeast. This is within the urban service area and the East Lake Orient Park community planning area. The adopted future land use category is office commercial 20. Surrounding future land use categories include light industrial, residential 12, and research corporate park. A large portion of the site is within wetland and water areas, and that's indicated in light blue on the map. The proposal before you today is to move to the urban mixed use 20 future land use category. Potential impacts. There's no change in maximum density between the adopted and potential future land use categories, with a maximum density of 2,099 dwelling units. 50% of the site is estimated to be wetland areas. This is a current estimate, as Planning Commission staff have not received final comments from the EPC. When we have those final comments, we will update our density calculations. But using that 50% estimate, the maximum density would be 1,312 dwelling units for the adopted and potential future land use categories. For office commercial 20, the maximum intensity is 0.75 FAR with up to 600,000 square feet, and the commercial component is capped at 350,000 square feet. For the potential urban mixed use 20, the maximum intensity is a 1.0 FAR with up to 4.5 million square feet. And assuming that wetland density credit, again at 50% of site estimate, that'd be a maximum of 2.85 million square feet. So the proposed plan amendment is also tied to anticipated major modification of a prior plan development, requesting up to 422,000 square feet of warehouse distribution office uses. So this requested 422,000 square feet for the major modification would be well below the maximum 4.5 million square feet permitted in the urban mixed use 20 potential future land use category. And so that concludes this presentation for HCCPA 21-06, and this will be coming before you again for the July public hearing, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you for the great presentation. Were there any questions or comments from the commissioners on this one? Not seeing any lights going on in the room. Not seeing any hands raised on the WebEx. We will thank you for the presentation and move on to our next item. 4M, HCCPA 2107, Future Land Use Map Amendment, Lakewood Drive and Bates Street. The presenter is Ms. Unica Mills again. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, Unica Mills, Planning Commission staff. Can you all see 2107?
Yes.
Good afternoon again, Unica Mills Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present HCCPA 2107, Lakewood Drive and Bates Street. This plan amendment is centrally located within Hillsborough County. This is a privately initiated map amendment, and it is almost a total of 2 acres. It's located within the urban service area. Bates Street is a local roadway. Lakewood Drive is a collector. And again, the site is located within the Brandon Community Planning Area, specifically located within the Suburban Character District. Here's an aerial of the site with the site outlined in pink. The predominant uses in the area are single family residential. We have some larger lot single family residential here, and then smaller lot single family residential located further west of the site, and smaller lot single family residential that's directly adjacent to the west of the site. As for the future land use designations in the area, as you can see, the predominant area is residential, designated as residential 6. There is a portion to the south of the site that's designated as residential 9. And the request before you today is to change the future land use designation to residential 9. As for the current adopted residential density on the site, at residential 6, up to 6 dwelling units could be considered for the site. As far as non-residential intensity, that can be considered up to 175,000 square feet at a 0.25 FAR, or 21,000, whichever is less intense, could be considered. Of course, this would all be subject to commercial locational criteria. And for the potential, with a potential change to the residential 9 future land use classification, the maximum density would increase to 17 dwelling units. As for maximum intensity, with a 0.50 FAR, a little over 42,000 could be considered for the site. And if the non-residential uses exceed a 0.35 FAR, it has to be for office or residential support uses. And that would total over 29,000 square feet of non-residential entitlements. And again, of course, that would be subject to commercial locational criteria. That concludes my presentation for HCCPA 2107. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'll be back before you July for a public hearing.
Thank you. Great presentation. Are there any questions on this briefing from the commissioners? Seeing no lights in the room and pausing for a second, seeing no hands online, we'll move on to our next item, HCCPA 2109, Future Land Use Map Amendment, 58th Street South and 24th Avenue South, and it's Ms. Unica Mills again.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, can you all see 2109?
Yes.
Again, Unica Mills Planning Commission staff, I'm here to present HCCPA 2109, 58th Street South and 24th Avenue South. Again, this plan amendment is centrally located within Hillsborough County. It is privately initiated. It's small in scale. It's located within the urban service area. It's located on approximately almost 3 acres and within the Greater Palm River Area Community Plan. Here's an aerial of the site. As far as land uses in the site, surrounding land uses, we have heavy industrial uses located to the west of the site. We do have some open storage and heavy industrial, of course, to the north. There is an existing single-family residential that is directly east of the site. Further south, we have additional open storage and heavy industrial uses along Causeway Boulevard. Currently, the site is designated as residential 9. Other future land use classifications in the area include light industrial to the west. We have presence of office commercial 20 to the south. Further south, we have a presence of residential 6 here. And of course, again, this to the east is residential 9 and further north, residential 9. And the proposal before you today is to change the future land use designation to suburban mixed use 6. Currently adopted at residential 9 future land use classification, the maximum density that could be considered on the site is 26 dwelling units. As far as a maximum intensity at residential 9, it allows for a 0.50 FAR or a little over 63,000 square feet of non-residential uses. Of course, that's subject to commercial locational criteria. As far as the potential at a suburban mixed use 6, the maximum density would decrease. The maximum intensity for freestanding use would also decrease to a 0.25 FAR or a little over 31,000 square feet of non-residential uses. As for office or research corporate park, that would also decrease to a 0.35 FAR. If the site were to develop out at light industrial uses, the FAR would be at a 0.50, or again, a little over 63,000 square feet of non-residential uses. So again, the major change here would be a decrease in density and intensity if the site were to develop out with a single use. If it was to develop out at a light industrial use, the maximum intensity would remain the same. Again, the suburban mixed use 6 allows for industrial uses in open storage, which is not allowed under the residential 9 future land use classification. So that would be the major change with the proposed SMU 6. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you for another great presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Nope. Nobody online with their hands raised. So we will thank you for the presentation and move on to our next item, 4O, AICPA 2113, Future Land Use Map Amendment 3450 East Fletcher Avenue. And the presenter is Tony Garcia.
I'm here.
Okay. I thought I was going to have to start telling jokes again.
Stall for time, stall for time. Okay, I have it this time. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Super.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Last but not least, HCCPA 21-13 is at 3450 East Fletcher Avenue. Mr. Chairman, this is in your neck of the woods, so you should be pretty familiar with the area. On your map here, the aerial, you can see that it's located just to the east of, oh, I have the wrong map up, hold it. I want to go, it's a locator map which shows you it's north of USF. This is the one I wanted to show you. Okay, so this has got a greater context to it. So Bruce B. Downs is to the left, East Fletcher Avenue is to the south. The parcel that we're talking about in question is located just on the north face of East Fletcher Avenue. Of course, the USF campus is to the south. This is located right where the boundary splits between the city of Tampa to the south and unincorporated Hillsborough County to the north. As one can see, of course, we have the USF campus to the south. We have a variety of general commercial uses on the west side of Bruce B. Downs with some multifamily. Also some multifamily in the northwest quadrant of that intersection of Fletcher Avenue and Bruce B. Downs. And to the north, really, there's also some multifamily in addition to some associated office and medical related uses. The site is privately initiated. It's 2.53 acres. It's in the urban service area, and it is within the boundaries of the University Area Community Plan. It currently has a land use designation of Office Commercial 20. Some of the other areas, the predominant land uses in the areas are, of course, the USF campus to the south, which is public, semi-public, the hospital, which is directly to the west, and also residential 20, which signifies a multifamily to the north. The request is to go to Regional Mixed Use 35. As you all can see, there is a parcel directly to, well, in close proximity to the east of the subject site that already has a Regional Mixed Use 35. This actually was also the subject of a plan amendment from Office Commercial 20 to Regional Mixed Use 35 about 7 or 8 years ago. As far as the impacts go, under the current Office Commercial 20, the maximum density is 50 dwelling units and the maximum intensity is a 0.75, allowing 600,000 maximum, with your commercial component capped at 350,000 square feet. The potential to Regional Mixed Use 35 allows a maximum density of 88 dwelling units and a maximum intensity of 1.0 FAR, which is just over 220,000 square feet. So if approved, the plan amendment change would allow consideration of light industrial and regional scale retail or research corporate park uses. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions should you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Great presentation. Are there any questions on this item from the commissioners? Not seeing any lights in the room or any hands raised or interest on the line, we will thank you for the presentation and move on to our next item. Executive Director's Report. It's on you.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, evening, Melissa Zornita, Executive Director. I sent out my report via email yesterday afternoon, which recounts that much of my time in the last month has been spent in briefings on a number of the items that were on your agenda today, making sure that board members, county administration knew about the outreach and our studies on the Waimama and RP2 projects. The one item that I mentioned earlier, we have had several meetings as it relates to the complex legal issues related to the Waimama and RP2 projects, and trying to meet the expectations of the Board of County Commissioners as well as the community, as we talked about, and the issues on infrastructure timing with growth. We've had some good discussions with the county attorney's office, not only on those issues, but also on, you know, the role of the planning commission versus county administration, the role of Mr. Robin versus the county attorney's office. And that has been, I think, very productive. As part of that, Mr. Robin and I have also spent a good bit of time talking about how to bring in our outside counsel on the litigation, because these issues are inextricably entwined. And so we have worked with Carlton Fields to ensure that their scope of services with us does cover their review of the drafts of the Waimama and RP2 pieces, and some time in meetings with staff on any issues that they might see there. At this point, I'll pause because I think Mr. Robin might want to expand on a couple of points in that regard, if he wants to chime in.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening, everybody. I thought it would be useful to give just a little bit of context on that. Particularly in light of the controversial nature of these plan amendments that are being processed at the current time, and their close proximity of litigation or pending litigation that involves both the county and the planning commission. I've recently attended several meetings with staff members of the agency, as well as county attorneys, to discuss some concerns about some recent changes that were made to the text in the proposed amendments. Primarily because the language that was apparently requested by county staff or by members of the BOCC may pose some conflicts with what are now current requirements of Florida law. And I think Melissa mentioned earlier that those tend to impact matters related to concurrency, impact fees, and exactions generally. And we want to be sure that the provisions that are put into the plan are in conformity. My role at these meetings, and we've had these from time to time with other jurisdictions, but this is a little different because of the existence of this litigation that's pending. My role in these meetings is to help identify, the legal compliance issues and coordinate with the county's attorneys on alternative approaches to resolve all these problems. Our conferences and my involvement is strictly limited to legal issues, so that I'm very careful not to interfere with the drafting of the plan amendments or the staff recommendation. And I wanted you to be aware of that. That's one of my primary purposes for chiming in on this. I wanted to assure you that as your counsel, I'm not advising staff on whether these proposed amendments are consistent or inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, nor am I reviewing or commenting on the drafts that staff's developing on their report, or participating in the drafting of actual plan amendments. And Melissa's already mentioned the fact that after some discussion, we thought it would be very useful to bring in outside counsel. Of course, they're handling the litigation, We think it's important to make certain that they weigh in on the legal concerns that the county attorney's office has expressed, that I'm concerned about with them. We're in lockstep on our concerns about these things. We want to avoid the prospect of any new claims in the case, and we of course want to avoid any further complications in the case that might prevent opportunities to resolve it or settle it. So those are my comments, and if there are any questions, I'll be glad to try and address them.
All right, not seeing any questions. I'll continue with a couple other items in my report. As I also informed you in the email that I sent out with, we now have a conflict from HTV with the August 9th Planning Commission meeting. Based on a couple of responses that I got from you all, it seemed like August 24th might be a preferred date. Wanted to see if you all could perhaps arrive at some concurrence on that so that I can get that rescheduled. We are still evaluating whether or not we will have action items in the regular meeting. So there could be the potential that we separate the meeting, have our regular meeting on our regular date, it just be done as a virtual meeting, which we would not need HTV's assistance with, much like our workshops. But I think if August 24th works for you all, we could just move the whole thing to that date. I'm seeing head nods for August 24th from at least 4 people.
I have a conflict over here, but don't want to stand in the way if the majority can make it.
Okay. Okay, I've seen a 5th head nod. So if I know I've got 6, then we can move forward with that. And I will. I see a thumbs up from Giovanni on the screen, so that's fantastic. Okay, so it sounds like August 24th will work. We will get that confirmed with HTV. Thank you for your accommodation of that. My only other comment is I wanted to remind you that we have a regular meeting on July 12th and a public hearing, which you saw the length of the briefing items on today's agenda. That public hearing will include all of those county plan amendments with the exception of RP2 and Waimama. Those public hearings will be on July 19th. So on July 19th, you just come in for a public hearing at 6 o'clock. Right, just. 2 meetings or 2 dates that need to be on your calendar for next month. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to our next item. We have business, chair's business. I have none. Old business. Anybody in old business? No takers. All right, new business. I see we have an action item here.
Yes, sir. The item before you is a request for a continuance by the applicant of CPA 20-09. This was a county privately initiated text amendment to the comprehensive plan to make modifications to the affordable housing density bonus. Per the procedures manual, the applicant has already utilized their 2 by right, if you were, continuances where they can request them. At this point, they, per the procedures manual, either need to move forward or the continuance could be made by the executive director or the planning commission. Given the complexity of this plan amendment, we felt it was most appropriate in consultation with Mr. Robin to bring the request for continuance to you all for a determination of whether or not you feel it is appropriate to continue the amendment at this time. And I believe the applicant for that request is on the line and wishes to speak to the matter.
Good afternoon. This is Jessica Eisterman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Jessica Eisterman. I'm an attorney with Stearns Weaver Miller. My address is 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100, Tampa. As Mr. Anita said, this is a comprehensive plan amendment regarding affordable housing, specifically in the WVR2 area. Earlier today, you heard Mr. Collins provide an update on the WVR2 study and the ongoing community outreach. You also heard him say that affordable housing was a major part of that community conversation. Last week, you had a workshop with Tyndale Oliver about the countywide affordable housing density bonus update. And since this is a privately initiated comprehensive plan amendment that is so closely tied to both of those comprehensive plan amendments, we believe there is an overriding public interest to continue this comprehensive plan amendment to the next cycle to more closely align with the publicly initiated amendments, which may impact this comprehensive plan amendment. So today we are here, respectfully requesting a continuance to the next cycle.
All right. Are there, go ahead.
If I could, I would just add, because y'all are probably not as familiar with the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Procedures Manual as I am, the exact wording from the Procedures Manual is that the Planning Commission or the Executive Director may continue a comprehensive plan amendment with the concurrence of the applicant for an overriding public interest, such as, but not limited to, conducting additional public outreach, further coordination with other agencies, or to allow time to complete a neighborhood community plan. An additional processing fee will not be required of the requesting party for a continuation process under these circumstances. Thank you.
Did you say the fee won't be required?
That is what it says.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask, sorry, my thoughts got broken up. Was there anyone to sign up for public comment on this, or anyone interested in saying from the public on this? I'm assuming that was the applicant's presentation, so we should be hearing from the public if there is any. One from the public who has anything to say?
We did not have anyone else signed up in the public.
Okay, very well. We will kick it over to the planning commissioners then. I thought I saw some motion on this side of me. Yes, Commissioner Powell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion that we approve the applicant's request for continuance of CPA 20-09.
We're still taking comments, but I'll hold that motion for later. Are there any more comments? Commissioner Bernstein, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess before we're called upon to consider a motion, I just want to make sure I understand how this is being framed. If I heard Ms. Ernita correctly, there's three and only three bases for continuance: community outreach, coordination with other public agencies, or the need to complete a neighborhood community plan. Which of the boxes are we understanding this to check, I guess, is my question to the group, because I don't know if I heard that within the presentation that was just made.
If I may, the procedure is such as but not limited to those three items. It's not, it has to fall within one of those boxes. But in my opinion, it would most closely align with the box of performing additional community outreach. We are, as the applicant for this comprehensive plan amendment, we are closely tying our application with the community outreach with WVR2 that planning staff is performing, and adopting much of what we hear through that community outreach into this comprehensive plan amendment.
Thank you. And I guess then just a quick follow-up question, perhaps for our executive director, but to your knowledge, is more community outreach planned or desired in connection with this particular initiative?
That's a good question. I think as it's a privately initiated text amendment, ultimately, whether or not on that specific amendment there is additional outreach would be in the private applicant's purview. There is, as Mr. Collins described, additional outreach in that we have another open house in about 2 weeks with the community related to the Waimama project, as well as the public hearings yet to conduct to really know ultimately what is adopted in that Waimama plan amendment process. I don't know if that really helps.
But that outreach program you mentioned is if it's 2 weeks away, that would be scheduled before this is currently teed up to be reviewed, assuming no continuance.
Right now, if this was to move forward, it would move forward to your July 12th public hearing, which is, would not give either the applicant or staff really the opportunity. We would have made our recommendation by next week, really, to be meeting that July 12th deadline, or meeting, and the materials being ready and transmitted to you all.
And can you just read that language one more time? Just the language
Absolutely.
Preceding the three. It may just be a sentence.
Sure. It says, may continue the comprehensive plan amendment for an overriding public interest, such as but not limited to conducting additional public outreach, further coordination with agencies, or to allow for time to complete a neighborhood community plan.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Some good questions. Commissioner Powell, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To follow up to Commissioner Bernstein, one of the things that I think still has to be flushed out with the WVR2 reach out to, that community continues to discuss and bring up, affordable housing. And I think we need to, I don't know if it's been discussed or thought of yet, whether or not that's going to be part of the community benefits, for WVR2. So I think that's another, reason why it's a good idea for, this continuance.
Thank you. I have a question myself. If we continue this thing, obviously they've used their two by right, can they come back again after this? Or, I mean, God forbid that the BOCC says, no, let's just go do more research spend lots more money again. That's silly. But if that does happen, what are then their options?
I mean, theoretically, they could come back and ask you all again for another continuance. By putting if you chose to continue it, it would move into the July cycle of comprehensive plan amendments, which would not be heard by you all until October, which would be after the BOCC had acted on transmittal of the Waimama plan amendments under the current schedule.
Right.
But if that schedule changes, certainly other things may need to change.
So they could potentially come back for another one of these freebies, because let me just understand that again. There is no cost. There's a cost for a regular continuance, right? For the two by right ones.
There is a cost for a continuance normally, right. But under the new fee schedule. But yes, this, because it is at the Planning Commission or the Executive Director's direction that it's being continued, not at the applicant's direction that it's being continued, that fee is not assessed.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Comments on this one? I'm not seeing anyone on the WebEx or any more lights in this room. So with that, I will go on ahead and close the public comment section, and I will take Commissioner Powell's motion. You didn't finish it. Could you finish the, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sorry. Get myself situated here. All right, thank you. I would like to make a motion that we approve the applicant's request for continuance of CPA 20-09.
Second.
We got a motion to approve the continuance by Commissioner Powell, a second to that motion by Commissioner Doughty. Is there any more discussion from the commissioners? Not seeing anyone in the room or anyone online. I will go ahead and do a roll call vote on this one.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Cardenas?
Yes.
Dix?
Yes.
Doughty?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes.
Linkus?
Yes.
Marino,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you. All right. And with that, we will go to our next item, and that will be committee reports. Anyone have committee reports? Yes, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to give the affordable housing update. The Community Land Trust RFP is still out there in the wings. I don't believe they've selected anyone yet to do the study on that, but at least it's been out and they've received responses, back on that. So hopefully that will be underway soon. In our meeting yesterday, we did have a really great presentation on transit-oriented development pilot program that was done by Hart, and I've got that here, and if anyone wants those slides, I'm sure Melissa or Marianne may have them, readily available. But a really great presentation. I did ask at the end of the meeting that the presentation that we had in our workshop from Tyndall Oliver be presented, to the Affordable Housing Board as well, because I thought there was really a lot of great, information. So that's it.
Good deal. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kress, did you have a? No, I didn't think so. Were there any more committee reports from the commissioners? Not seeing anyone on the WebEx. We will end that, and we will move on to our last item, which is adjournment. So, oh, wait, hang on just a moment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to wish Commissioner Kress a happy 25th anniversary today.
Happy anniversary, Commissioner Kress. All right, and with that, we have no more business, so, oop, did I hear someone? Nope. All right, no more business ahead of us, so I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 5:30, and we will see you at 6:15-ish for the later meeting, the hearings. So meeting adjourned, and we'll see you later on. Thank you.